All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our second council meeting of the month. Today's July 18th. And we, of course, are having our meeting both in person and remotely. So our workshop this evening is a continuation of the discussions we're having with regards to our go forward plan for insurance for the city. So tonight we have with us Washington City's Insurance Authority. We have Rob Roscoe, Deputy Director, and he's going to walk us through what they can do for us. And I'm sure you guys will have lots of questions.
Thank you. Like the mayor said, good evening. My name is Rob Roscoe. I'm the Deputy Director of WCIA, or Washington City's Insurance Authority. Used to say WCIA, people would think, oh, Washington Central Intelligence. Then I say, no, it's insurance, and they just glaze over, and I lost them. But I am one of those unique individuals that find insurance somewhat fascinating. I'll give you a little bit of history. This is my second stint back at WCIA. I was there from 2000 to 2005 as a risk management representative. I left to go work for Safeco Insurance. I was there for about 6 months, but got recruited down to the city of Auburn, where I worked for 12 and a half years as Director of Risk Management and Human Resources. So I definitely understand municipalities, going to city council, presenting for mayor and council, as well as budgets and everything that goes along with working for a municipality. Then I got recruited back to WCIA, and I've been there for a little over 5 years now as the Deputy Director. I think part of the reason why I got recruited back was I was on what's called their executive committee, where I was asking, I think, too many questions, and my boss wanted to shut me up, so she brought me in-house. But no, I'm really pleased to be back at WCIA. I have a degree in loss control risk management. It's what I went to school for. I am one of those unique individuals that actually went to school and studied in my chosen career, my profession. So I do enjoy insurance. I'm, again, one of those individuals. You can go next slide. A little bit about WCIA. We were actually the first risk pool created in the state of Washington back in 1981. We were formed by 6 local municipalities, primarily because, believe it or not, municipal governments in particular, are not very good insurance risks. They had a tough time trying to find insurance. What insurance they could find was very limited and very restrictive, as well as frustrating, because what they found was the carriers had total control over how claims were handled. And sometimes things, as you know, can be a little bit political, and insurance carriers just looked at bottom line. They wanted profit and loss, and they didn't care about big picture sometimes that the agencies wanted better control over. So they decided to create their own insurance company. And that's where WCIA was created back in 1981. We are an interlocal government agency. So I am a public employee. So everything I do, I can relate to working in that fishbowl. I am the public employee as well. So we do not use a TPA to handle our administration of the pool. We work directly for the pool. So we report to the executive committee and to our membership. Currently, we have about 167, going to be 168, 12-1 members throughout the state of Washington. We only insure municipalities or municipal agencies. We do not insure any county, state, or school districts. We only insure municipal agencies, or you serve a municipal function, such as a 911 dispatch center, sewer, water operating districts, fire authorities, or central fire districts, things of that nature. You have to serve a municipal function to be a member of WCIA. So we don't insure any sort of county or school districts either. We are by far the largest risk pool in the state of Washington. We offer the most broadest coverage, as well as the most assets in reserves, so to speak, throughout the state. And that can be good and bad, as you will discuss. Right now, we're in a really difficult time in the insurance industry, as you probably have heard through your own existing carrier. Washington State is a tough market. Insurance is very tight right now, especially in property and liability. So there's 2 different components that make up the bulk of our members' assessments: liability and property. Property insurance is your stuff so that we insure, so that would be first party. And liability is when someone makes a claim for damages against your agency. So if someone alleges that excessive force was used, or there's an auto accident and you damaged a third party. That's the liability component. And both of those are really tight right now in the state. Property is more on a global scale due to climate change, catastrophes, hurricanes, especially in Florida. Right now, you may have heard a lot of carriers are pulling out of the state of Florida as well as California because of the fire hazards, where homeowners cannot even buy homeowners insurance to insure their properties. It's getting that difficult and that tight. And that has a domino effect throughout the industry, where we insure from a liability perspective, the first $4 million that we insure in-house. So I buy reinsurance above that layer. We're unique in that regard compared to most other risk pools in the state of Washington that may take on at most maybe $1 million to $150,000 self-insured layer. We insure the first 4 million. And we do so because we try to buffer ourselves against the cyclical industry of the insurance markets, i.e. those rates are going to go up and down. And the more you buy reinsurance, the more coverage you have to purchase, the more you're going to be susceptible to those fluctuations. So at 4 million, we're a little bit better buffered, and we offer up to $20 million in liability coverage to our members. From a property perspective, we insure the first $1 million in property, and then I buy up to 400 million above that. Throughout the state of Washington, I insure close to $16.6 billion worth of property throughout the state. So it's a lot of assets that we have covered throughout, and we offer both property, all risk policy basis that we'll kind of go over here in a bit. You can go to the next slide. Some of the advantages of being with a risk pool, and it's not just WCIA, any risk pool is probably going to give you some of the similar advantages in that we're run by our members. We're run by a board of directors. We have an executive committee that oversees kind of the day-to-day operations for the pool. They're elected by the members. It's a 9-member committee. Every year, I believe it's a 3-year term, and we have them staggered. So every year we have new elections that delegates, if you do join WCIA, you have to assign a delegate to be a representative at WCIA. And then that delegate could be eligible to run for our executive committee. I will say we are a very committee-driven organization. We have a lot of committees. We have our executive committee, we have a risk management committee, a grant committee, long-range planning committee, a budget committee, an investment committee. And I should mention the investments, and you probably experienced this firsthand as well. Being a government agency, we can primarily invest in bonds. And you know what the bond market's done in the past few years? It's been horrible. On paper, we've lost close to $20 million. Now, that's market value. Long-term value, we'll get that money back, but because the bond market was inverted, on paper, our financials show a $20 million loss. But again, ultimately, we'll get that back because we believe in the buy and hold scenario, and hopefully interest rates get a little bit more stable. But in a rising interest rate environment, those bonds become less valuable. But the new bonds you buy then have higher yields. So again, long term, we'll be fine in regards to that. But that's one of those things that have been impacting a lot of government agencies. But again, we are run by our members. We are very adamant in risk management. That is kind of our bread and butter. We understand as a government agency, you can't avoid certain risks. You know, you can sometimes contract them out to third parties, i.e. we have some members that don't have a police department, they'll contract with the county. Well, you're going to end up paying for that one way or the other. You can either have it in-house and control it, or you can contract it out to a third party, but then there's a cost associated with that. Regardless, you're going to provide a lot of services. Our job is to try to educate our members in how to help reduce, mitigate, or eliminate those potential elements of loss with providing those services. Again, you're not always going to be able to eliminate it, but there are certain things you can do to educate yourselves, educate staff to help prevent those claims and those liabilities ever from occurring in the first place. So that's where we're very big proponents of risk management and education and training for our members. And our budgets reflect that. We spend a lot of money annually in training our members. One, it's their money, it's your money when you join the risk pool, and it's something that they value and want. So that's what we provide for them. Stability. We also have, and we believe in providing stable rates, and that can be very difficult in a tightening insurance market. I.e., one of the primary drivers of our rates is the reinsurance costs. I had reinsurance rates, just to give you an example, last year, we had different reinsurers from 1 to 4 million, it's all WCI money. From 4 to 10 million, we belong to what's called GEM, which is Government Entities Mutual. It's a pool of pools, so to speak. So it's created by other risk pools for risk pools. And that's the only members that can be in there. And then from 10 to 15 million, I buy a traditional reinsurance policy. And then from 15 to 20 million, I have another carrier. $15 to $20 million layer last year increased over 68%. You know how many claims and losses we had in that layer? 0. We didn't have one claim or one loss. It's just that tough of a market. Now, I look to try to get other carriers that would be interested in purchasing and reinsuring these risks. And unfortunately, there's just not a lot of takers out there. Washington State, we have joint and several liability. We have no tort caps. So we have a lot of things going against us from a government insurance perspective. One of the things we have going for us, though, is we have very good members. We train them. We provide a lot of risk management to those members. So we try to market our programs and our members to those carriers. We have a lot of agencies requesting to join WCA. We don't let any member join WCA. For one, you have to have what's called the average or better loss history for the actuarial group in which you would fall into. We break our members down into different actuarial groups based on the reported worker hours that they have. And then we're going to do a 5-year look back at your loss history. If you don't have the average or better loss history for that actuarial group, I'm saying thanks, but no thanks, because your losses are going to impact our members and vice versa. Our members' losses are going to impact you once you join WCA because it's a risk pool. So we're all in this together. And that's where stability comes into play. Now, stability and accountability kind of are at odds with each other, i.e. we also have some accountability tied to those assessments based on our individual members' loss histories. So rates can fluctuate based on your own individual loss history within the pool. So there's some stability component to it and some accountability as well, factored into those annual assessments. The other nice thing about it is coverage decisions are made by our executive director, Ann Bennett. We are a staff of 21 employees. We provide $20 million in liability and insure over $16 billion in value, and we are 21 employees deep. That is almost unheard of from an insurance perspective. No insurance company is going to insure that much risk and have that much of exposure with that lean of a staff. But again, this is what we do, and this is what we've been doing since 1981. And the nice part about it is when you have coverage questions, you have the ability to appeal those coverage decisions directly to the executive director. The delegate and staff have her phone number. She's already been out to meet with staff with myself. I think it was last month where we came out and gave a brief presentation. And that's almost unheard of as well. When I worked for an insurance company, I never had the CEO's phone number and could call them up directly to complain or discuss coverage decisions. Also, if there is a decision that you don't agree with, you have appealable rights to the executive committee, who's comprised of other members, other municipalities throughout the state that you would have direct appealable rights to. So there is due process that would go along with that. So that's rather unique from a risk pool versus an insurance carrier direct perspective. Next slide. Kind of briefly touched on this already, but from liability, we offer $20 million in coverage to our members. Hopefully, we never have to use those limits, but it's there if we need it. And you may have heard verdicts are going through the roof. The state got hit with a $98 million jury verdict for wrongful death out of a CPS situation. Spokane County, 20 million for defamation. That was not a shooting. That was not a quadriplegic. That was a defamation situation. And that was 20 million in Eastern Washington. That scares carriers. That drives rates. That's why insurance keeps going up every year. It's because of these nuclear verdicts. And Washington isn't unique in that. California, Florida, they're happening throughout the nation. Unfortunately, Washington, we don't have tort caps, and we don't have some of the other defenses and immunities that other jurisdictions have. In particular, we have joint and several liability. That is really scary way that plaintiffs can allocate liability if you have an innocent third party that could get hit in a crosswalk or as a passenger in a vehicle. So basically, it's called deep pockets liability. If you're at least 1% at fault, they can collect the entire verdict from you, even though someone else may be 99% at fault. If they just find you 1% at fault, you could be paying that entire verdict or judgment. So that's where things really drive and escalate costs on an annual basis, unfortunately. But with liability assessment, you also get cyber. Cyber has been really difficult the last few years, especially for public agencies, because you guys have been a target for the ransomware with vulnerabilities, and coverage will depend upon the controls you have in place that we have you submit an application to our carrier, but we pay for that cost as part of your annual assessment. So that is not a direct cost to the member. We group purchase it for our members as a whole. Same thing with, we have a pollution premises liability coverage up to $2 million per event, $10 million pool wide. And that's for the sudden accidental release of a pollutant that could spread onto a third party. So it's to clean up your property as well as a potential third party's property with that contaminant. And it has to occur during the policy year. So we're not going to go back in time and clean up a hazardous waste site that's been existing for the past 30 years. That's something completely different. But again, that is included in your annual assessment. Then, and in order to be a member of WCA, you have to join the liability program. That is non-negotiable. If you want to be in WCA, you have to be in the liability program. The property and auto physical damage are optional, but 99% of all of our members are in both programs. The nice thing about the property, we do have very good coverage, and we have had very stable rates. Again, we insure the first $1 million in loss. It used to be $750,000. I increased it at a renewal last year up to $1 million because the market was demanding it, in essence. And I kid you not, if I didn't have bad luck, I'd had no luck. I renewed 12/1 for our property program. I think it was 12/3. Ellensburg experienced a complete fire loss of one of their recreational buildings from an arsonist, from a neighboring hay company. It wasn't the city's fault, obviously. It just then spread over to the city facility for a complete loss of $8 million. So I increased my retention, and I get to pay for another $250,000 of that loss. But that's why you have coverage, is for those type of events and occurrences. And that's what we're here for, is to provide that coverage for our members. And it's replacement cost coverage. So regardless of what it's scheduled on the policy, and this is where it can be very difficult sometimes to come up with a accurate amount on the policy, but we do appraisals. We hire a third-party appraisal company that comes out and appraises your locations that are valued at $225,000 or above. $225,000 from a public perspective, unfortunately, is like a picnic bench these days. It's not a lot. We're capturing about 90% of all of those scheduled properties to have that third party look at that appraisal. So you get a good understanding for what it costs to rebuild that structure, i.e., that's the coverage you get. It's not what it costs if you sell it, it's what it costs to rebuild it in today's dollars using today's materials and today's labor costs. And that's where things can get very expensive very quickly. And with COVID and the shortages that came about, that's why the property market is so tight right now in the insurance industry. Values were way undervalued, and carriers couldn't make money because so many things were undervalued. We've been kind of ahead of the game and been doing these appraisals for our members for the past 10 years. So when I have to go over to London to Lloyd's to purchase insurance and meet with carrier, we call it speed dating. I'm literally in a room meeting with new groups of underwriters every 45 minutes. So I have to do the same song and dance to a whole new group because they all want a percentage of coverage. No one wants to be on the hook for the whole $400 million if we have a large loss. So they all take a percentage of that. But I've been going over there for the past 5 years, and my predecessor has been going over there for the past 10. So we have a well-established relationship with the market. And that's where I'm confident that we have good terms and good coverage with those. We value those relationships from a long-term perspective. Same thing with our members. And this is what I tell any member, look, we probably will not be the cheapest risk pool out there, but we provide the most services and have the best services for our members. But if you're looking for pricing, then we're not your risk pool. We don't want members looking for just a pricing scenario. Mind you, we're very cognizant these are public dollars and we're a public agency. We don't underwrite for a profit. We underwrite to cover our costs. But our costs are joined by all of our members, it's shared, and we provide those services in risk management and trainings throughout the membership. And we think we're probably competitive, if not the best price for most municipalities. But if you're just looking to price shop, then you might want to go somewhere else because we want people to want to be a member long-term. We do value those partnerships just like we value it with our carriers as well. So I don't think we're unique in that regard, but I think we are probably I would say we are the most sophisticated risk pool out there with the services that we do provide and the extensiveness of those for the membership. We also provide equipment breakdown coverage through HSB, very competitive. We don't underwrite that per se. We underwrite liability, property, and auto physical damage, but then we group purchase policies for equipment breakdown and the crime and fidelity. And the crime and fidelity has been a great partner for WCIA. Actually, some of our members, we've had price decreases the last few years on that. So that's been really beneficial. And it also helps satisfy the bonding requirements for those faithful performance bonds that are required. The crime and fidelity policy has that coverage for the elected officials and for staff as well. And it's a lot easier to collect on an insurance claim than it is to try and get a bond paid for. That's almost unheard of. But again, that's what it's there for. You can go next slide. One of the things that's unique about WCIA too is we do have some requirements of members. Because again, we're a risk pool, your losses impact everyone else's losses. We have what's called our compact requirements. We want our members to be attentive. We have organizational requirements that you have to attend at least one full board member or full board meeting a year. We have 3. We have actually 2 in person and 1 remote. One in person is in January and another one in the fall. And then we do a remote one in May. So we make it very easy for members to attend that full board meeting, and we never have a problem with it, no one complying with it. Because again, we want members that are attentive, that understand what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing. And also sometimes there's coverage decisions that have to be made. We change our coverage policy based upon the members' needs. Last year, we extended it out for mental health crisis and expanded our medical malpractice to include mental health providers because of the police and the use of force, and then getting involved with crisis management and mental health providers and crisis responders. Again, we don't think it's ever going to arise to a medical malpractice claim, but we extended coverage to that to make sure that there was no uncovered situation that could arise for our members. And that's voted on by the membership at that full board meeting. Education requirements too, we have you attend at least 3 trainings annually. I can tell you, most members have absolutely no problem meeting that and go well beyond that, well into double figures in attended training. And that's for any staff member. We do, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, some of the extensive training programs that we provide on both a regional and in-house on-site basis. And then we also do what's called an annual audit, where we will come out and take a deeper dive into a topic. It could be police, it could be personnel, it could be land use planning, could be special events. That was this year's special events. And we usually have a range of topics that a member can choose from. Could be contractual requirements, taking a look at your contract risk transfer mechanisms, making sure you have adequate insurance from those vendors, all those things that we want to make sure that you're adequately protecting your assets and your staff are doing things right and appropriately. Now, very rarely do we have things that are what we call required, but sometimes they will be required, i.e. if we're doing the harassment discrimination audit, you have to have a policy. You have to have a means in which employees can complain. And if you don't have a policy, it's a no-brainer, because then we can't defend you if someone makes that allegation. So usually there's an RCW behind it, or there's case law that says you have to be doing X, Y, and Z. And if you're not doing X, Y, and Z, we don't have the ability to defend you. And if you don't have the ability to defend, then you're creating an uninsurable risk that we're going to have to charge you more for. But very rarely, I can't even think of the last time we had a assessment penalty due to a audit finding. Because for the most part, we're going to train you. We're going to give you a year to get into compliance with that and give you the tools. If it's a policy, we'll give you sample policies. If it's training, we will provide the training. So all those things, and give you the tools in which you need to get it done for. And then we also do an annual review where we'll talk about your property schedules, talk about your coverages, any changes being made, discuss your risk profile, your loss runs. Risk profiles where you're comparing yourself to your actuarial peers within your group, depending on the size of your city. Again, we break down our members into different actuarial groups based on the worker hours that are reported. And then you can compare yourself to your peers within those groups and see how you're stacking up and where losses are occurring throughout your own agency. And then we do a kind of overview compact status and stewardship report that kind of shows you the benefits you get from being a member. Obviously, we charge an annual assessment, but then you also get benefits either through risk reduction grants, pre-defense, all sorts of different programs that we offer in trainings. And we kind of give you that snapshot in that annual review, just so you can see all the different sessions staff had attended. We do in-house claims. So we have a claims manager and we have 4 different claims adjusters in-house that are handling just municipal claims. This is what they do. This is what we exist for. So they handle it cradle to grave. We do not have to handle our claims off to any carrier. We have the total right to adjust claims, and the reinsurer backs our coverage document. So we do not reinsure. We do not have a separate policy that we have to follow based on an insurance carrier. All the reinsurers agree to follow our coverage document. So our coverage document is primary, and they agree to back that. And that's a big consideration because, again, those coverage decisions are then being made by the executive director. I can tell you firsthand, when you have a large loss, the first thing an insurance carrier is going to do is look to see whether or not they have to pay. They're for profit. This is what they do. We like to come from a perspective of how do we find coverage, not exclude coverage. Again, because we are your risk pool. Members own us. We're there for the members, not to try to find ways to deny payment and not cover a covered claim. Again, we always try to come from a place of yes. Sometimes, unfortunately, there could be some uncovered allegations, especially those inverse condemnations or things that are not a civil tort or taking per se, but that's where your own city attorney and your own defense would come into play. But that's with any carrier. And again, we use experienced trial attorneys regionally out of Spokane, as well as on the east side. We have land use attorneys, we have personnel attorneys, very experienced, knowledgeable, and unfortunately we have to claim history to back it up, unfortunately. But that's what we're here for. And we even have a 24-hour emergency service for Sedgwick administration. They are a third-party administrator that we will hire, especially for if you had sewer and water backups, things like that, where they have to go out in the field and adjust those things on a field basis. That's where we use those third parties. Next slide. Risk management is really kind of our bread and butter. We have what's called our pre-defense review. It's been a very popular program. We fund it to the tune of over $750,000 annually for the membership. We do not cut the members off as far as the number of calls or durations they need to talk to an attorney. That's where you have a situation that could arise. And I can give you firsthand experience when I was with the city of Auburn. I was there for 12 years. I had certain attorneys on speed dial. I would call WCI up and say, hey, I have a situation developing and I need to talk to an attorney regarding this. One was over medicinal marijuana and the pot shops. When LCB, Liquor Cannabis Boards, first came out with the legalizing marijuana, they were issuing 2 licenses to every entity. That was it. That was the most you could have. But then they said, we don't need medical marijuana anymore. And because they're getting away from the medical marijuana, from the recreational marijuana, they opened the door up. And they said, okay, now instead of 2, we're going to allow up to X number. So it expanded. Well, we had a situation in our jurisdiction where we had the 2 already formed, already operational. Well, then the third one came up and put up their sign and they were ready to open and all the calls came flooding in. You can't have that there. That's right in front of X, Y, and Z, or a gateway to a neighborhood. So city attorney and mayor at the time decided to stop it. And I said, wait. They went to court, got an injunction, and stopped them from opening. So wait, this is somewhat problematic. They already had tenant improvements. They've already been permitted. They're vested. And now we're going to stop them from opening. Yeah, but we didn't agree to 3. We only wanted 2. I said, okay, but the state offered 3, and that's where I called WCA up. They offered me a land use attorney. We were able to walk through this process because I looked at how much revenue they were generating on a monthly basis. It was close to like $850,000 in gross revenue. And we had an injunction to stop that. That starts damages. So I was really concerned that this was going to turn into a multi-million-dollar potential claim. But by getting that attorney and walking through the process, we were able to come up with a great solution where we ended up moving that license, that location to a different, better location that they would agree upon with the help of our economic developer. So it was really a win-win scenario, i.e., I don't think we had a legal basis to deny them from opening because of their vesting rights. Yet they needed to operate and we just didn't want them up there. So by talking that through and getting a attorney involved and working with my city attorney and the mayor at the time, we were able to get a good win-win scenario. This also comes up a lot with some personnel decisions where you may be unfortunately looking at some terminations and you have a lot of rights. You have a lot of legal loopholes or hoops you have to jump through to make sure that that termination is going to be justified and not going to be alleged to be discriminatory or harassing or any other of those protected class statuses. So this is one of the things that you can kind of just dot your I's and cross your T's and have another set of eyes look at something before you make that decision. And again, it's no cost to the member. It doesn't impact your loss run, so it doesn't impact your future assessments either. And I can tell you, it's probably our most popular program. We have a lot of it, and we encourage it. We want our members to call us and tell us about it. If you have some concern about something you're doing, it could be, we get a lot with free speech rights, especially with homeless, and as well as other areas with signs and vagrancy and homelessness and panhandling, things like that, that come up a lot in jurisdictions. And we say, give us a call. We will walk you through it. We will get you an attorney to give you another set of eyes and ears to that process. You also have an assigned risk management rep. we have 4 in-house representatives. You would have 1 assigned to the city that any staff could call and talk about any sort of issue that's they're dealing with. It could be we're looking at sending kids over our life. This is a funny one. We have lifeguards that wanted to go over to Eastern Washington for a training. Is there any concern? Well, they're 16. You're sending them overnight to a hotel unchaperoned. I got some concerns. But it's things like that that the risk management rep can then talk to them about to make sure that you have proper safeguards in place. And again, we don't tell you you can't do things. We just say, if you are going to do them, here's what you want to get in place and watch out for. And we have guidelines, risk management bulletins. We have extensive guidelines over all the things municipalities do, dealing with public works, right-of-ways, certificates of insurance, indemnification language, risk transfer mechanisms, police pursuits, use of force, all guidelines developed for agencies to kind of look at and use as tools for best practices. Sometimes they're model policies, sometimes they're cautionary tales about what you should look out for if you are doing that. I.e., if you're doing police ride-alongs, make sure you get waivers, make sure you don't drop them off, make sure you have, if they're underage, permission slips, all those different things that you would have to do to make sure you're safeguarding your own programs. Next, we also have a program called Stump the Rep. Oh no, this is the Risk Management Grant Program. So these are grants that you can apply for that we give out. Very popular for like sidewalk suckers, where you can elevate sidewalks to eliminate the unevenness, or grinders. We've even done programs with the trackers, star tracers, so that police don't have to pursue. They can hit a car with a kind of like an Apple tag, so to speak, so you can track it and find it later, so you don't have to engage in that dangerous pursuit. Members apply for grants, and then we have a grant committee comprised of members that decide where the money should go and allocate it off to the different members on an annual basis. And it also applies to staff development grants. So if you have staff who want to go to different trainings, you can apply for those as well. For PRIMA, which is Public Risk Management Institute, they can apply for those on a regional and national basis. We also have a consultation program. That's the Stump the Rep program, i.e., if we can't answer it in-house, we will assign an attorney to review it as well. So if there's a exposure that we're not familiar with and our risk management team can't answer it, we'll assign an attorney to review that as well from a risk consult perspective. Training, we're very big on training. We have a lot of regional, local on-site trainings. We do a new thing called forums, police and personnel HR director forums. Police forum got so popular during when the legislature was coming out with the new reform laws that we had even non-members sneaking in on our trainings, attending some of the neighboring members' trainings and sitting in on that. And actually they ended up joining the pool because of the trainings that we were providing. But it's very popular because these things are so dynamic. They're being enacted in the legislature, sometimes without a lot of guidance. So we have our authority council, our legal advisors, talking to the chiefs over the impacts as to what these new laws mean and where you can and can't go with them, i.e. whether it's use of force or pursuits, mental health engagement. All these things are so new and so encompassing that members need training and tools. And it's kind of funny because we were talking to the legislature before they enacted some of these laws, and we told them the implications that they were going to be. We're going to tell our members that they can't do X, Y, and Z. And then they come out and say, oh, well, these were unintended consequences. Well, they're not unintended consequences when we told you what the consequence was going to be. And now they have to come back and change laws again to deal with those issues. But those are some of the things that, again, we're providing to our members. We do a lot of regional, and now even one of the benefits, and I personally like to train, I like to talk to people. I like to, as a trainer, I like to do it in person so I can see interaction, I can see body language, but I get the benefit of Zoom. The fact that we can now reach 400 people instead of a room of 35 has its benefits, and we certainly will do both, depending on the scenario and what we think is appropriate. But we do in person as well as a lot of Zoom and regional trainings that members can apply to. And members or trainings are free to members. Some it's exclusive just for members, and some we will open up for cost to non-members and charge them a fee to attend. But we also do reimbursements for municipal accreditations, WASPIC, Lexipol, all those fun things we're big advocates for, and do provide reimbursement up to 1% of your assessment back to the members for those accreditations and other trainings that you want to attend or apply for. Next slide. We have what's called Origami as our risk management information system. We buy licenses for all our members. So once you join, you have access to this. This is a platform for the city to add property, add vehicles, look at losses, look at where things are occurring within your jurisdiction. So you can track and see things. So this is, to me, a good analytics tool for our members to keep track of where things are occurring, what losses are occurring. And again, it's very user-friendly. We work with our members on that as well if they ever have any questions regarding it. It's just another tool to kind of identify some of those areas of where risk or where losses are occurring within your own jurisdiction, whether it be sidewalks, streets, crosswalks, water mains, or police or personnel. All those things would be reflected in Origami for staff to review. And then next slide, you can see we have a website where members would have access to that, where we have all these resources, our liability resource manual, our risk bulletins coming up with new recent risk management bulletin was dealing with homelessness. Another one was with the new Supreme Court case that came out dealing with recreational immunity and signage, making sure you have adequate signage over those artificially dangerous latent conditions and how the courts are now interpreting them. So we try to give the members anything that's dynamic in the courts, that information, so they're aware of and access to it through our portal and through our website. Next slide. We have members sign up for trainings, and very rarely do we have a week go by that we're not offering some type of training somewhere for the members. A lot of times, sometimes it could be unique just for your municipality, where we can partner with you and we would do a cost sharing training just for your staff. Or if it's done on a regional basis, then it would be free, i.e. we invite your neighbors to attend Spokane Valley, Millwood. We have Cheney, Moses Lake. We have a ton of municipalities throughout the state of Washington where they could then attend. Next slide. Oh, and then this is just kind of the cost summary for the pricing to join WCIA. And I understand and recognize insurance is not a fun annual bill to get. No one likes paying it. I don't like charging it. Unfortunately, it's the cost of doing business in today's society, and it just keeps going up and up. I wish I had a better answer for you regarding that. But tort reform in our state is, I don't see it happening, unfortunately. I was hopeful with the state getting hit with a $100 million verdict that they would feel that pain and start recognizing that maybe they have to put some type of control in place. But unfortunately, I'm not hearing that. I think it's falling on deaf ears still. So costs are going up. We do try to control those through education and training and risk management. That's the best thing we can do, is educate staff, get good members, and try to provide them the tools to do their job safely and effectively. With that question.
Yeah, just a quick question. The cyber insurance.
Yes.
What's the cap on that for ransomware?
It depends on your controls, and we'd have to do a deeper dive into that. It can go up to 500,000 down to 100,000 to excluded altogether if you have no controls. So we do have quite a few members with the 500,000, mostly fall within the 100,000 and then a 250,000.
Yeah, 500 doesn't seem like a whole lot.
It doesn't, unfortunately, but it's the best we could get.
Is there a chance to, is there opportunity to buy into more or no?
What we did, because we recognize that that's not a lot. And we told members, if you want to get more, because you don't buy this, I buy this, so there's no charge. So it's free to the membership. So if you want to buy your own policy, you can certainly try to buy your own policy. We would just then have to exclude you from our policy because you can't have dual coverage regarding that. It gets too convoluted with multiple carriers. And we had some cities that tried to buy it on their own and couldn't. It was just not available. Now, that was last year. I think this year, to be honest with you, things have softened up a bit in the cyber market. And some of those same cities that went out to market last year, I mean, one was our state capital, Olympia, tried to, and they couldn't get it. And they have a very sophisticated program with controls in place, but the market wouldn't bear it. They just said, no, thank you. It was that difficult to get cyber insurance. Now, if they went out today, they may be able to purchase it, but it is going to be expensive.
Thanks.
You bet.
All right. Let's kind of open it up to whoever wants to ask the next question.
Yeah, hopefully I'm here to answer any questions you have regarding WCA, what we do and why we do it, and what we can do to help.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I've got 5.
Sure.
Well, before you start, if there's anybody, any of the staff members, either here in chambers or joining us by Zoom, if you guys have any questions, please raise your hand and I'll make sure you get called on.
Definitely.
And I'll try to be quick and hopefully they're quick answers. You referred to the city of Everett, $8 million claim. Are you going to keep them in the pool?
I'm sorry, the city of who?
City of Everett, you said there was an $8 million claim.
Everett's not in the pool.
Ellensburg, I think.
Oh, Ellensburg, yeah, that was property loss. Oh, yeah, they're gonna stay. Yeah, that's why you have insurance. That was an arson caused by a third party. Yeah,
Understand,
there's
but
definitely.
claims,
We don't kick members out. We work with members. The only time you would have the potential for what we call a member action plan is when staff's non-responsive and not following controls or looking at things. But no, there's no issue with the loss.
next question. Attend one of 3 meetings. Who do you usually see attend that meeting from the city?
A lot. It could vary. It can be staff, the delegate. It could be city attorney. We also offer a training at every full board meeting, so you can attend the training as well. So depending on what the training is, we'll also get staff there. But usually it's the delegate, the alternate delegate, or a staff member.
Okay. And then not right this second, but can you provide a list of your current members that are in our part of the state
Definitely.
or statewide?
Yep.
Actually?
Yep.
That'd be great. And then with such a lean staff, how do you lobby with the legislation?
We have a lobbyist. And we partner too with other risk pools. Again, we try to do collectively what we can't do individually, but again, we find the lobbying has not been very successful. We also created a new legislative committee for just that purpose, to try to get our members more engaged, because when we talk to the legislature, even though we're a risk pool and we're taxpayer dollars, they view us as insurance. And that's so frustrating because we're not insurance, we're tax dollars. So we find they listen better to our members from a municipal perspective.
And then my last question, you talk about it's a member-owned pool.
Mhm.
Is that a fair term?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So my business is a member of another pool in the home building world. And if you perform well, meaning no claims,
Mhm.
then although we deal with the Department of Illinois at a state level.
Yep.
If you have no claims and on your second and third year, so on and so on, you get some of your premiums back. How do you have something similar?
We don't do that's retrospective rating.
Right.
We don't do retrospective rating, but your losses impact your assessment. So if you don't have losses, your assessment's not going to go up as much. We have a mod factor, much like L&I does, where a mod factor of 1 is average. And if you're below and have less claims, you'll be below 1, so you won't be assessed as much as your other peers with claims.
So if you have no claims, then your premium probably hopefully stays flat
Or doesn't go up as much
Correct.
as, yeah, because inflationary costs, as you know, just because you don't have claims don't mean you won't in the future either. So we still have to assess.
So those funds, then, since you're not for profit, I heard,
Mhm.
that's where you get monies for grants and other training
Well,
support and stuff like that.
All of our money, again, I'm a government employee. We're an interlocal government agency. So we are created by the Interlocal Act. So we're not profit, we're a government agency. The monies we collect from our members goes to fund our claims, our costs, our expenses, as well as future claims, costs and reinsurance costs and trainings. The trainings and grants are all through our administrative budget. And then we have our claims reserve and our claims budget separate.
Fair enough. Thank you.
You bet.
Next, I was just looking at the clock too, real quick. We got about 5 minutes. Anybody else? Councilmember Solberg.
Thank you for the presentation.
You bet.
You've seen our claim and our history.
Mhm.
What makes us a potential
One
another
year,
one of your members?
you can join, you're eligible for joining because your loss history
That's
is
not what I asked.
better. Well, for one thing, your claims weren't outside the realm of anything that raised any concern. We saw some issues. Obviously, everyone's going to have some claims. You can't stop people from filing claims. But whether or not you're liable or not is where you draw lines. And what I saw from your loss history, you did not have anything that raised any red flags whatsoever. So that tells me that you have some good staff and good citizens and good police, because really, even then, you can do everything right and still get claims filed and still have costs incurred. So that even isn't a precursor.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, any of the staff members online, do you guys have any questions? Don't see anybody raising their hand. All right, Kyle, I know you've got your microphone in your hand. Is there anything you wanted to add?
And I just wanted Rob to expand. Thanks again. Me and Mark went through this presentation about a month ago, and one of the things that we had discussed afterwards was the onboarding process, what that looks like, and kind of take us through that, understanding that if we do go this route, there is a 3-year minimum, which makes sense.
There is.
And to discuss kind of evaluation of history and where we potentially see premiums in the next 3 years.
Sure. Premiums are a tough call. We are in the process. We're always looking at renewals. I think it's going to be really difficult with liability, with the state getting hit as hard as they had in the county. That verdict, I heard from a carrier already that they're not happy with Washington State. But again, we're a little bit buffered because of our attachment point. So yeah, we still see rates going up. Unfortunately, I don't see it stop right in any immediate future. Property is a little bit more unknown because of the global and national level. Our program, we see rates being pretty stable, probably around 15% or so. Liability, a little bit worse, probably around 20 to 25%. I can foresee.
Every year?
No, well, it depends.
Okay.
Not necessarily every, and even then, individual rates can then fluctuate on top of that. So we can have a base rate of 20 and then individual members can go up or down an additional 15%. So you could go down to 5% or be as high as 35%.
So 25% is the pool as a whole.
Yes, 25% as a whole, and then individual rates depending upon your own loss history. And the onboarding process is, we have what's called a pre-membership program that if you decide to join, and we just had a recent member do this, that you sign a pre-membership agreement and you can start attending all of our trainings and different sessions free now. Because we want you to get familiar with WCIA. We want to educate staff the best we can. So we make our programs that don't have a cost free. Now, it wouldn't make you eligible for the pre-defense because that requires an attorney, but the trainings you would be eligible for right away. But we would then meet with staff and do a full director and management team and meet with them, with our management staff, to go over our services and what we provide from an onboarding perspective.
All right, anybody else? All right, doesn't sound like we really appreciate you coming over. I heard you say earlier that you drove.
I did. It was such a nice day, though. It was too bad. It's just from Tukwila, and my son lives up in Cheney, so
Oh,
I'm gonna
there you
go
go.
visit him.
There you
Yes.
go. Well, we appreciate you taking your time to come over. This is gonna be a process for us, of course.
Oh, understood.
So we will be having further discussions and probably going back to everybody with additional
Yep.
questions.
And if anything comes up, feel free, give me a call or shoot me an email. And we need to come back out, and more than happy to do that as well. So thank
Appreciate
you
it.
for your time. Appreciate your ability to serve. I know the time it takes to be where you're at. So thank you.
Well, I will make one request. Have you ever thought about combining your summer board meeting with the Association of Washington Cities Conference to get more attendees?
We do.
Oh.
Well, not with AWC, we
No.
did with the Labor Institute
Oh,
over in Yakima back in
Oh.
the day, but then we now make that remote. So, but
Gotcha.
we do our fall training over at SeaTac
Mhm.
at the airport. So members that do want to fly in, they're able to fly in right there and have that session right there in person.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you. I
All
appreciate
right,
your
so
time.
we're gonna adjourn and for about 5 minutes, we'll be back at 7. All right, everybody, welcome to our Tuesday, July 18th, 2023 City Council meeting. We are obviously here in person. We also have our remote component via Zoom. We are going to start off with our regular session. We had a workshop at 6. So we're going to start with the invocation given by Councilmember Cargill, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us.
Our Heavenly Father, we're thankful for the opportunity to come together as a community tonight to discuss issues and to try to come up with solutions that are in the best interests of our citizens. We ask for your blessing on this meeting that we can work through discussions and come with a purpose of understanding. And we thank you for the opportunity again for all of our first responders, for all of our troops and our citizens who serve in so many volunteer positions. In Jesus' name, amen.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We will go on to roll call. Councilmember Van Orman was feeling ill. If someone wouldn't mind making a motion to excuse both her and Councilmember Kurtz, who is still out of the country.
Move to excuse Van Orman and Kurtz.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Councilmember Spencer. Any opposed? I'm sorry, any discussion? All right, all in favor of excusing Councilmembers Van Orman and Kurtz, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, they are both excused. All right, we are up to agenda approval. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Mayor, at this time, I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda by making a motion to add under item 19, an executive session for RCW 42.30.110.1G regarding personal matters.
All right, do we have a second?
Point of order.
Yes.
Do we need to do roll call?
Oh, I did miss that, didn't I? Thank you very much. I will go back to that and we'll come back for a second. All right, so we had our excusals, but I did not call a roll call for everybody else. I apologize. Councilmember Cargill,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Foliar,
Here.
Councilmember Spencer,
Present.
Councilmember Dunn,
Happy to be here.
Councilmember Saulberg.
Here.
All right. Thank you for that point. I appreciate that. Okay, so we are back on. We have a motion to add executive session to item 19. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Councilmember Spencer. Any discussion? All right, not hearing any. All in favor of adding executive session to item 19, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, not hearing any. The motion to amend the agenda is approved. Now, if we have a motion to approve the amended agenda.
One more quick question.
Yes, sir.
On 15A, I know we talked about this last week. Do we need to wait until we get to 15A to break that up, or should we break that up now?
We can do it then.
Okay.
We've done, that's usually how we
Okay.
do it.
Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying.
Can I make a motion to make another amendment?
Sure.
Excuse me, another amendment to the agenda. I'd like to break out items, general business, consent agenda items 10 C, D, E, F, and G, and move it to general business. Mainly for discussion on each topic
Absolutely.
individually.
All right, I know we were kind of rushed this week, having a meeting back to back, but if we can try to get that feedback to Kelsey before the end of the week, each week when we get that, that'd be great. So we have a motion to move items, consent agenda items C, D, E, F, and G under general business 11. Do we have a second?
Was it C or just D? C, D, E, F, and G.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Spencer. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor of moving those items under general business action items, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. We will move those items under 11. Are there any other motions to amend the agenda before we move ahead? All right,
I'll make a motion at this time to approve the amended agenda as we just discussed.
Second.
we have a second from Councilmember Solberg. All in favor of approving the amended agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ayes have it. We have an approved agenda. All right, we are moving on to the most fun part of our meeting is citizen comments. So just a reminder for those here in council chambers, if you'd like to make a comment, we have some little yellow half sheets by the door over there. If you could fill it out with your name, whether or not you live in these city limits and your topic, and get it to Kelsey at the end of the table. We will take those in order. For those of you online, if there's anybody who'd like to make a public comment, just send a note in the chat to Todd Henderson and he will get my attention. It's a reminder that citizen comments is truly citizen comments, one-way dialogue, but if there is something we need to get back to you on, we'll make sure we have your contact information. And as usual, the time limit is 3 minutes. Do we have anybody in chambers? All right, not seeing any. Todd, do we have anybody online? All right, I went through that spiel. Do it again later. All right, seeing no citizen comments, we are up to item 7, announcements, proclamations, and special presentations. Tonight, we have a presentation from Spokane Regional Collaborative on you have a long description here. Presentation from Spokane Regional Collaborative on recommendation for formation of Spokane Regional Authority for Homeless Housing, Health, and Safety.
Thank you, Mayor, and
Thanks for joining us.
yeah, good evening. And so let me just introduce myself. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Rick Romero. I retired from the city of Spokane, or at least tried to in 2019. I haven't been real good at it. So I spent 28 years in higher education out at Eastern Washington University as an administrator, and another 12-year career with the city of Spokane, both as Director of Strategic Planning and as the Utilities Director for the city. When it comes to this project, I am a volunteer. I'm volunteering my time along with 2 other colleagues who also retired from the city of Spokane and also aren't very good at it. Teresa Sanders and Gavin Cooley, who some of you may know. The reason we really felt like we wanted to get involved with this issue was a couple of reasons. It was becoming very divisive and, in our opinion, very politicized in a way that really wasn't getting to any pragmatic solutions. And so we felt like maybe we could help try to bridge some of those divisions and get people to sit down together and with more fruitful conversations. But the second reason we got involved was just a recognition of how siloed the dollars and the thinking and the staffing had become around this issue. And it really comes down to the federal and state and local dollars that are dedicated to trying to address these problems, and how they get divvied out to different jurisdictions, and then how those through RFPs get divvied out to different providers. And you end up, when you're done with that process every year, something like 60 to 75 individual buckets of money out there that aren't really connected in any major strategic way. So those were the 2 reasons that we kind of raised our hand and said, hey, we would like to take a shot at trying to at least bring some solutions forward on this. So we went to the city of the Valley, we went to city of Spokane and Spokane County, and we worked together on a joint statement, basically saying that we would engage in a 90-day due diligence period to try to talk to the public, hold meetings and sessions and workshops, and pull together providers and come to some solutions that we could bring forward as far as a recommendation goes. So I kind of gave you the why of why we're here and why we put this together. Let me talk a little bit about the what and then a little bit about the how. And then more than anything, I just want to have a discussion or answer questions here. I'm not here, I'm a really bad salesman, so I'm not here to try to sell you guys anything. I'm here more to try to answer questions and help understand what we're doing. So as part of that 90-day due diligence period, the three jurisdictions that signed on to it initially asked us to address four things. They asked us to address what would the legal model be for a regional authority? What would the governance be for that regional model? What would the funding be that would be moved to a regional authority? And then what would the staffing be that would be moved to that authority? So we embarked on really answering those four things. And we got into this a few weeks, and the West Plains cities of Cheney and Airway Heights and Medical Lake asked if they could become part of the process and join the discussions as well. So we had a team that we created that had 2 electeds from each of the jurisdictions, along with the executive teams that were responsible for this issue in each of the jurisdictions. And we invited at that point Medical Lake and Airway Heights and Cheney in. So we had a pretty good group of people. We were talking through this for the full 90 days. And what we landed on as far as the legal structure was a public development authority. And we really felt like it was going to need to be something that was a quasi-government entity because it's predominantly public money. And so it was going to need to fall into the public domain in the sense that it followed the public meetings and the public records kinds of requirements. But we also felt like that it needed to be integrated with private and nonprofit individuals and entities as part of the structure as well. So the PDA is kind of that in between, if you will, and we've used it for a number of different things in both the city and the county, where we typically bring together public and private interests to try to address specific objectives. So there wasn't really a lot of pushback around that model from any of the jurisdictions. And so that seems to be maybe the least controversial of what we put out there. As far as the governance, we took a look at a lot of programs that had tried to do this. City of Seattle as an example, the city of Houston as an example. And none of them really used a mixed model. They either went all private or they went all public, and they've each had their own issues to share with the challenges of that. So what we recommended was a governance model for this that basically would have 5 elected representatives on the board, a 13-member board, and then 8 nonprofit or private representatives on the board that would really represent the core interest areas that we think are important to address this issue. So that would be someone from behavioral health, someone from health in general, someone from private housing, someone from public housing, someone that would represent the interests of business, someone that would represent the interest of philanthropy, one individual with lived experience. And I know I'm missing one, and I'll find it here real quick. Maybe not as quick as I'd like. Oh, and one from public safety. So what we were seeing that we really felt like needed to be brought together was people were arguing either or. And there was a lot of discussion about this is a housing issue and we can build our way out of this, or this is an enforcement issue and we can enforce our way out of this. We felt like it's got to be both. And we felt like there's a really important third criteria here, which is behavioral health. So we're trying to bring together individuals that can represent and speak for each of those 3 kind of key areas. So basically the funding that we recommend is the federal, state, and local funding that is predominantly right now in the city of Spokane and Spokane County. There's most of the money is either flowing through the city or through the county. And it's probably something that people would argue, well, the representation should go with the money. We didn't necessarily agree with that. We think the representation should go with the expertise and the elected representation needs to be fairly evenly divided. So the money is predominantly coming from HUD on the federal side. It's coming from the Department of Commerce on the state side. And then there's several programs that are local tax revenues or their document recording fee revenues. And I've talked with Mark a little bit about if there's any of that that comes to the city of Liberty Lake. It doesn't sound like it's a large amount of money, but again, the idea was to put those dollars together from all of the participating entities and see if we can't do something a little more integrated and smarter with our investments. As far as the staffing, most of those federal and state dollars allow staff to be supported as part of the cost of those grants or entitlement dollars. And honestly, rather than getting into a battle of trying to get rid of one staff and start with a whole new staff, given that it's a PDA and a public entity and you've got union contracts and all kinds of other things involved, we basically said, let's just move the staff over that goes with those dollars. So whoever is supported by those dollars, the recommendation is to bring that staff over to the regional authority. The last thing, and then I'll shut up and let you guys ask some questions. We decided that rather than just bringing forward a set of recommendations that probably were going to get set aside and vacations would happen and then nobody would figure out how to come back together to create anything out of those recommendations. We actually created a set of legal documents that create the entity through a charter and a resolution. It would be created as a countywide PDA. The charter is developed to define kind of the governing terms of the body and the duration and what the termination options are, that type of thing. And then the third document is an interlocal agreement that would be signed by all the participating entities that would actually transfer the money and the staff and the contracts to the new entity. So 2 documents create the entity. 1 document is signed by everybody that moves money and staff that wants to participate. And so we've kind of created a situation where we're hoping it compels some action because nobody has to take our words on a piece of paper and try to figure out how to convert them into legal documents. And we used 5 volunteer municipal attorneys that helped us, also retired, to work through those legal documents. And I think Mark has indicated those have been shared with all of you. So I'll just stop there and let you guys fire away.
All right. Go ahead, Councilmember Solberg.
Thank you, Rick. We met back when I was on the
Yep.
streets downtown Spokane. And one of the things that I was talking to you about then is something that ironically you brought up by missing public safety as one of the members of the group that you were doing. And I've asked this, been in every one of the homeless symposiums and been involved with Chris, been involved with Fawn through VOA and some other things. Where exactly do you see public safety or law enforcement in this interlocal agreement, public facilities concept? Because, and the reason I'm asking is because it's been left out of every one of the symposiums. It was alluded to when we had Houston come and talk a little bit, and then you heard me ask the San Diego, directly and said, oh no, without the cops, we couldn't do it. No, where exactly do the police fit into this? Because they're the ones that have been the garbage collectors. We were the ones that were doing that for the last 50 years. And in the last presentation, we'd had the talking about mental health, is our speaker made it very clear that here we've been having police officers having to respond to mental health calls for which no one was ever prepared. So please elaborate.
So first of all, I apologize for leaving out public safety, and obviously the most important one. I shouldn't have left that out. I guess I would answer that by saying we believe public safety has to be represented, and it isn't just the police. The fire and EMS folks are quite honestly the first responders on a lot of these issues that is taking up a lot of resources on both public safety sides that ought to be, quite frankly, spent on other issues. And so I think we're not suggesting that the regional authority should try to run public safety, but it certainly needs that voice at the table. And the objective here is to find a smarter way to address these issues, so that we're not just continuing to put them right back out there and repeat the same thing over and over again.
Rick, thank you for the presentation. I've been a very interested and an advocate and a participant in each one of the symposiums and the other presentations. And I'm firmly a believer in a regional approach to the objective. I'll recognize that individual jurisdictions, whether it's the county or the city, when put to this task, have a track record of not being successful. Only to combine objectives and energy to this, I think, is a recipe for success. I really appreciate the objectives combination of the resolution. Specifically, this isn't just about housing, and this isn't just about mental health, and this isn't just about substance abuse. It's a Venn diagram which combines all of them. And so the authority's objective, I think, in asserting all of those services in combination is what represents the distinction from prior efforts in that regard. With respect to governance specifically, I really appreciate this in comparison to other regional authorities. Specifically, I draw attention to the Spokane Public Facilities District, a quasi-public entity defined to create facilities for the use of our greater region that has been a track record of success for the facilities that we've been able to take part in. The Spokane Regional Health District as another case study, providing critical services that really only could be accumulated if we all got together on it. And not the least of which is then the Spokane Transit Authority, a transportation benefit district defined with a really big footprint that has great benefit for all who participate. And in their governance and structure, their board is combined then as leadership from all those different jurisdictions. So I strongly support the objective and look forward to our city participating.
So thank you so very much, Councilman, and I neglected to kind of mention some examples of PDA, and the ones that you mentioned, I think, also are an example where we have a mixed board of elected and non-elected folks. And I would throw the airport board in there as well. And I would say you've pointed out, in my opinion, some of the boards that have the best record of success. And so we definitely tried to model that with what we recommended.
I think Councilmember Cargill had his hand up
Thank you.
next.
Good to see you again, Rick.
Yeah, good to see you.
I have 5 questions for you.
Uh-oh, I better write these down.
Some of them I'm asking from my perspective, and then some I'm asking because I think the citizens want to know as well. I guess my first question, as I was going through the draft, which I know again is just a draft, it talks about in 6A that it would be that the parties agree to the startup fund staffing support. And what that is defined as in A is voluntary and or loan staff and leadership support and assistance from all relevant departments and divisions of the parties. So can you define what relevant departments means? Like, would you be asking for some of our city staff to then go work for this authority, or how does that all play out?
So good question. The intent of Section 6 was really to follow Section 5, which defined what we believe the intent was for the funding and contracts and staffing that would be moved. This would really allow us to move into kind of a transition period before, you know, we actually all say that we're doing this for sure.
Yeah.
And it would give us access to the people. I mean, we're outsiders. The 3 of us are volunteers. We can be persuasive, but we have no authority.
Sure.
And so what we haven't really had full access to is the finance and accounting staffs, the health and human services staffs, and probably the legal staffs from the entities that are going to have to make this work. And I shouldn't say we haven't had access to them, we have, but not to the level that we really need to drill down into the money and the contracts and the operations and make sure we're making the right decisions.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I guess my second question is, does this authority have taxing authority?
No.
Okay, so that will not be part of it.
And great point. Councilman, that there's really two things that a PDA can't do. It can pretty much do anything else that the local governments that create it can do. But the two things that it can't do is it can't tax, and it doesn't have authority for eminent domain. So it can't take property.
Okay, the other question that I had is, there's a part of the contract that says within the first 24 months, we or anybody else who joins it could terminate by providing 12 months notice. So essentially, we only have about a 12-month window in there, that if we decide, hey, we don't like this, it's going in the wrong direction, we could opt out. But then after that, it's set in stone, or we can still opt out as long as we pay the bonds off, is what I read.
So a couple conditions, and I'm glad you brought that up because I intended to mention that. Ideally, we would love to see this be a long-term solution for our entire region. And the hope is that, and the belief is that this isn't going to get solved, definitely not in the short term. This is a long-term issue that we're going to be addressing here. So ideally, we would love to see this be a perpetual kind of an entity, but it isn't realistic to ask you all to jump into this with no safety net. So what we put in there is that anytime after the first 2 years with 12 months notice that you can remove yourself from the regional authority. And it may be some communities it's not working. They think they're better served doing it on their own. So people need to have the chance to reassess that. So yes, but we also had to say that, you know, if we make joint decisions about long-term debt, that and you have dollars that are pledged to that debt, you can't just take your money and go.
Right.
So that's really how we tried to set it up.
Okay, and kind of a somewhat related to that, something that I would certainly love to see in an agreement like this is making it so that we're not just creating another layer of government, that we have an end goal in mind. And with that in mind, I would really love to see, perhaps it goes in section 7, or maybe it's a completely different section altogether, a sunset provision that just requires us, let's say after 5 years or 10 years, to go back to look to see, okay, this is actually working, here's what's not working, and then just requires the parties to reauthorize it. And then that way everybody can take a breath after that 10-year period, or whatever the number might be, and say, okay, this is really having this success here, or not having the success in this part. So that's something that just kind of caught my attention, and something that I would hope that we could add as well. Thank you.
And so just to summarize real quick on those questions, and maybe also talk a little bit about next steps. We're going to probably come back, the three of us that are volunteering on this. We recognize that the documents we put together are draft, and people are going to, just like this, they're going to say, I would suggest this, or I would like to see something a little bit different here. So we're going to propose to all of you that the three of us kind of serve as that reconciliation committee to take those comments and input. And we would like to continue to use that Thursday, every other Thursday afternoon. We've been meeting with, like I said, 2 electeds and the key staff, probably the city administrator or whoever else you would like. And use that group to work through the reconciliation of this. So the only thing that we would be asking you to do in all likelihood is if you want to participate in that, is sign a resolution saying that you agree. But that means you agree to let us kind of talk and work with your people to try to answer questions and those types of things as well. So we're going to propose that Thursday to the group and as a suggestion, and then we'll kind of try to be the clearinghouse for maybe refereeing and reconciling some of those issues. Thanks, sir.
Great. Anybody else? No. So I've got a question for Kyle, and I know we've got a workshop on this later. So I was looking it up, but just in case I got it wrong, even though I looked it up. So I believe it was substitute House Bill 1406, late 2019, early 20-ish is when we were able to adopt that basically a sales tax offset to go to something like this. It doesn't affect the sales tax rate, but it basically gets diverted to a program like this. And if I remember RJ running the numbers, and back then, it was somewhere along of $35,000 a year. I'm sure that has changed by now, and I don't know if the rate has changed over the years since that was put in place. I'm pretty 99% sure that the council passed all that and put it in place so that we could do this. Is that where some money could come from? It wouldn't affect our taxpayers. They wouldn't be paying any more. The city wouldn't be getting any less. But is that the mechanism that we could help support this?
That is correct. And
Okay.
so, yep, that ordinance and then previous to that was a resolution that we had passed. And so we can begin that collection as early as September 1st. And that is carved out from the 6.5% state tax.
Yes. Yeah.
So our residents wouldn't see any increase in tax.
Yeah.
And it would be about 49,000 a year.
I know.
that the city would collect, and then about 49,000. So it's pieced off half to the county, half to the city. Each entity would collect based on last year's sales tax revenue, about 49,000.
Okay, and then assuming that's the way that the discussion goes, that would be our opportunity to contribute to having this go forward. And to
That's correct.
support it.
Yeah, essentially the city, if this is the route the city goes, this we would essentially be a pass through monetarily. So the funds that receive from this tax would go directly to this program.
Yeah, and again, A, doesn't affect our taxpayers, they're not paying more, and B, equally important, the city is not receiving less.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anybody else have any questions?
Mayor, can I
Yeah,
ask?
go ahead, Councilmember Spencer.
Yeah, just one question in section 6, the not not less than 200,000, is that per municipality, or is that in total?
We're gonna talk about that on Thursday, but I think the three of us are thinking that the resolution is not gonna ask for any money from the municipalities. We really need kind of a commitment to you working together and working with us to answer any questions on the financial and contract side. So the ask we're going to make of you is not money. It's going to be really a commitment to partner with us to work through these things and try to find a way to get to an agreement that we can all sign.
Yeah.
So that's really what we're asking you for.
Right. All right, let's say if there's no more questions, we do have a workshop a little bit later
Mayor.
to discuss further.
Before we get
Yeah,
away from Rick, can I ask a question? I just wanted to make sure I understood for clarity's sake. At the June 28th presentation, I thought I understood there to be a 60-day window to do something. Can you clarify what that is and when that 60 days ends?
Great question, Mark. So what we presented on the 28th was kind of a two-step process. What we proposed is that let's take 60 days to work through these agreements, and then let's commit ourselves to the fact that we're going to create a regional authority. The 90 days after that was then going to be to really work through more of the financial and contractual details. It became pretty clear to us that a number of parties weren't going to sign an agreement to create an entity until we work through that transition period. So what we're going to propose here on Thursday is that we kind of put those two things together. We ask you to adopt a resolution saying that you support advancing this concept and you'll commit to work with us to try to get to documents that we can all agree on and sign. The goal hasn't changed. The goal is still to create this by January 1 of 2024. It's rather than doing it in two steps, we're saying let's put it together in one, and it probably is going to be more palatable for people.
Thanks.
anybody else have any questions while we've got you? All right, I guess we'll have further discussion later. Feel free to hang around.
Do you need me to stay?
We don't necessarily need you, but if you'd like to.
Okay,
hear
well, I
rest of
tell
the
you what, I
conversation.
need to get home if I can.
Well, we can always send you the recording.
But
if you're
but
that
I would be
curious.
happy to come back or if you have questions that come up that I'm able to
We'll make
answer,
sure
I'm
we
happy
get
to
to
do
you
that.
there
So,
if we don't.
thank you so much for your time. Really
We
appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, all right, we are on to reports and inquiries. First, we have city council reports. Does anybody in the short week that we've been apart have anything to report? Councilmember Dunn.
Today was a really big day for the Spokane Transit Authority. The ribbon cutting downtown next to Gonzaga University for the city line. The culmination of 10 years actually in the making, this combination federally, state and locally funded, nearly $100 million project arrived 10 to $14 million under budget. So significant achievement on the part of a public entity to deliver on an obligation. And these wonderful, beautiful, I'm going to say emission-free buses that travel the downtown core from Brown's Addition to Spokane Community College via downtown and Gonzaga University is really impressive. I took the opportunity then, well, Saturday actually was the unofficial opening. They ran the buses from Coeur d'Alene Park and Brown's Addition down to Spokane Community College and clocked 3,500 rides in the first 3 hours, I think, of operation. So it was very well attended. I would just want to congratulate the greater Spokane region for participation, Spokane Transit Authority for execution. And I'm looking forward to taking advantage of that and encouraging everybody when they visit downtown. For me, the position you say is you don't have to move your car. Find a place to park and the city line will take you wherever you want to go. Soon to follow shortly after will be the Division North Bus Rapid Transit, BRT. The same concept applied in which, you want to say, hey, at that stop over there, you don't have to even know the table. Every 15 minutes, a vehicle will be by to be able to take you around. So that as applied to the North Division Street, gated it principally by moving cars off Division and onto the north-south corridor. So planning and development is in process and don't have a timeline, but put those two things together.
Great, thank you. Any other council reports? Councilmember Solberg.
The Friends of Liberty Lake soiree was a wonderful success. Thank you to those that are present that attended and those who supported it. I don't know the final numbers yet, but they'll give us a report as to how much was raised, but a good time was had by all. And it was a wonderful night for it. Also, thank you to city staff, and I don't know, Lisa's not in here, but Lisa, David, and all for getting Mission open 2 days ahead of schedule for the River District. It's huge, and they did an excellent job on it. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, on to the mayor's report. Again, hasn't been that long since we saw each other before, so I'm just gonna touch on a couple things. So last week we had the SRTC regular meeting, and as I mentioned a couple months ago, I was appointed to the administrative committee. So we are deep into looking at the 2024 budget for SRTC. And during that regular meeting, I know it was in Lisa's report, but I had to point out that Liberty Lake was awarded $1,061,550 out of $1,415,400 that we asked for towards the East Mission Overlay Project, which is from Mission between Country Vista out here outside of City Hall to the roundabout. So that's scheduled for 2024. So that's a 75% grant for the cost of the project. So thank you to SRTC. And they've got an amazing process they go through to determine who gets these awards. And great job to our Lisa and the staff for putting that package together. So we will see that happen in 2024. There will be an action coming up for this council at some point in the future to accept the grant. So I have a feeling we won't have a problem with that. I know, just want to point out for the public again, I know this is in director report and there's going to be some touching on it a little bit later, but just at the high level, June 30th was obviously the end of the first 6 months of the year. Total operating revenue was at 60% of budget. So halfway through the year, we're at 60% of our expected revenues. So that's great. And a great trend with operating expenses at only 37%. I'm sure there's some things that haven't come in yet. That'll probably catch up a little bit, but great news. I know we were all trying to be cautious with a possible recession this year, and knock on wood, it's hasn't hit us yet. And one more thing, since we won't have another meeting before this starts. So Tuesday, August 1st is National Night Out. So that's where there's neighborhoods get together and celebrate together, get to know each other better, and start building a better relationship with our PD, which we already have obviously here in Liberty Lake. But if you haven't thought about it, about putting something together in your neighborhood to get everybody together, neighbors are always changing. It's a great night to get out, even in the late afternoon, to meet your neighbors and just make sure you know what's going on with your neighbors so you guys can look out for each other. sure Tina's having a get together that afternoon, so I should be done with that in time to come here, but there's still a couple weeks to plan, and there's a spot on the National Night Out website where you can actually register your party and your get together. So I look forward to hopefully hearing some reports of more than just one of those happening around town. All right, that is all for me. Mark, City Administrator report.
So before we transition from your report to mine, do you want to cover the Spokane County Jail measure?
Yes, thank you. I meant to do that and I was on my list and I totally blew by it. So as the council knows, and I don't know how much of the public knows this. So the Spokane County is planning on putting issue on the ballot measure on and for November, asking for a 0.2% sales tax increase to cover public safety, building new jail and some other things. As part of that, the municipalities would get a piece of that, but the Spokane City Council is floating the idea and asking for support to ask the county to put that off until next year. For a multitude of reasons. One, I know the city council wants to see a little bit better plan for how that money is going to be used. Second of all, I know that City Spokane is looking at putting their own increase in the sales tax on the ballot. And I know we've talked about it depending on what happens with the county. So the ask is, whether or not this council was to join in asking the county to do that. So we're going to get the letter out to everybody and have it on the next agenda as a short workshop so everybody can discuss and have a chance to read the letter and decide whether or not we all want to participate. Yeah, go ahead, Dan, if you want to add.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm grateful for you bringing this forward. I want to recognize our challenge in our budgeting process, specifically administratively. You're trying to occur too, right? The pass and no pass positions. So which we actually advanced to final consideration here in our own city is really structured around what's going to happen in November. I find this uncertainty to be really challenging administratively and would seek some relief from the county in that regard. So there's the administrative preparation of a municipal budget, and then there's our own considerations of the potential of a transportation benefit district. Such a thing to be able to maybe present for voters as potentially the introduction of a new taxing authority, combined with the measure presented by the county creates complications for us in our action. I personally find the measure presented by the county to be lacking in true planning for the total amounts that are being projected. I witness and agree heartily with our sheriff regarding the required increase in the actual beds in our jail, but find this measure to be not fully presented or fully presentable to our voters in this municipal.
Thank you. So we'll have that back on the next agenda after sharing that letter with everybody. All right, Mark.
All right, thank you, Mayor. If you look at the city administrator's report in front of you, we've got a couple events and reminders that we want to bring to your attention. The first one, we're looking backwards to June 30th when this became effective. And actually, I was hoping that Chief Soto was going to address this last week, and he mentioned it, but I want to make sure that there's some clarity surrounding this. As of June 30th, the Spokane Valley Fire Department has issued its notice and order regarding open burning and recreational fires throughout the district. And every part of the city of Liberty Lake is inside of the fire district. And so this burn ban applies to everyone inside the city limit. So again, it's a ban that is effective June 30th. It has no expiration date. It's until further notice regarding open burning and recreational fires. For more information, you can come visit our website. There's some infographics on there. We'll post this again on social media. The fire department's website has a host of information about this. And so if anyone's interested on more of the specifics, they can go to either of those websites and get that information. Looking down an item to item B, car seat checkup. This is something that's associated with Safe Kids Spokane through Safe Kids Worldwide and put on by Providence Sacred Heart Medical Center. And this is actually going to happen at our fire station number 3 out on Country Vista this coming on Saturday, July 29th, a couple of Saturdays from now. from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So this is, I believe, an annual event that occurs that is sponsored by Providence. And so there is, again, information about this on Providence's website. We'll put up some additional messaging about this on our social media channels. And this is a great opportunity to get your car seat checked. If you need a new car seat because yours is expired or defective, those may be available as well. But check out the information on that. And if this applies to you, put that on your calendar. Barefoot in the Park is just over three weeks away. It's on Saturday, August the 5th. I wanted to take an opportunity to specifically mention that that is coming. This is one of our signature events. And so if you are going to be in town on August the 5th, make sure to spend some time out at Pavilion Park for that event. And then just another reminder that our summer calendar is out. There are dozens of events that are listed on that. There's something for everyone. Come to our website, find something to plug into, and have a great summer. Any questions on events and reminders before we move on to the other items? Okay, so this is the second meeting of the month and our opportunity to distribute the department reports and give council an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have about those reports.
Go ahead.
Thanks very much. Quick question for Kyle. Kyle's still in the room here. I love the numbers in the revenue and expenses. That's looking great. I guess my question is, can you provide a little more light on the utility tax number, which is 64%? Are we really that far ahead, and are we on track to even exceed the I guess, you know, if we went it out the full year, we'd be at what, 1.1? Are we really going to hit that or exceed it?
That's what it's looking like. And so, I mean, utilities can be cyclical
Yeah.
to an extent based on the weather outside but we're growing at every single corner of Liberty Lake. And so trying to, I guess, adjust for that, adjust for increases that we've seen a Vista put on its ratepayers. Electric in general, I think has skyrocketed. And
Okay.
So that's what we've seen. We'll adjust kind of going into 2024 for that. Because it's a needs base for streets right now. And we're going to have plenty of discussions kind of as we get into the fall about are we allocating that properly? Does council want to see that somewhere else? Are we going to roll that back? What does that look like? And so we'll have several conversations kind of as we get into 2024 about how we want that to look and shape that.
And the 34% on the streets expenses, is that just due to timing, or are we?
So streets is really, I mean, one of the biggest drivers for streets, and Jen and Derek, if they're on, can expand on this, but project base on snow removal is a big one. And so having a light year in terms of that, and then having a light year in terms of just going around and project based potholes and things like that have a really big effect on it. And so we can see that potentially if we have a heavy winter in November and December, you can see that getting to 100% in a hurry.
But there's nothing outstanding in that.
Not that I'm aware of,
Okay.
no. So, and in terms of the general fund, we've seen 37%. So we have a down payment for Trailhead for $2 million upcoming as we reconcile the final Boughton invoices. So we will have a direct payment of $1 million for the building. And then as we get into October, council is going to be presented with poles and netting to address those to address that issue for potentially up to another $1 million.
And may I add to that on
Sure.
the street side?
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, so that percentage is actually fairly normal for this time of year for streets, and equally is normal for streets, general fund, and golf. And so we monitor that continuously starting at about this time of year. That's not abnormal in any way, shape, or form. So that's pretty typical.
And all right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Just noticing that the Public Works building looks like it's on the downhill slide. Haven't heard anybody say it's over budget. Are we under budget by any chance?
Lisa's logging in. There
We
she
are, we are not over budget at this moment, but we are very, very white knuckle tight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. All right, any other questions on the director's reports? All right,
All right, moving on. The state of Washington, actually the Crime in Washington report for 2022 dropped on July 10th. And so I'm going to ask Chief Simmons to come up and walk you through some of those numbers and what they may mean going forward. Chief?
Good evening. Just wait on Todd to pull that up.
move your mic up a little bit. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Can you hear me? All right. I'm gonna utilize the WASPIC presentation prepared by Steve Strahan. Just to brief you on a few things. I'm gonna start at the state level, and I'm gonna narrow that down to what we're seeing regionally and locally here in Liberty Lake. I'll spend a lot of time, I think, on like the third or fourth slide. Next slide, Todd. Again, this presentation was prepared by the WASPIC, the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. This is part of our annual uniform crime reporting that covers criminal offenses, arrests, et cetera, assaults on law enforcement, things like that. Next slide, Todd. Next slide, Todd. This is a really interesting report. If you all want the full report, it's well over 500 pages. It's also available, I believe, to the public on the WASPIC website, so you can actually access it. I would recommend it because you will get a really good comparison of our community with other cities, large and small. If you've ever taken the time to look at the report, you see that they group cities by population. So you can really compare a lot of different areas, crime, officers per thousand, et cetera, to our comparables and competibles, and kind of gauge where we're at in this battle against crime in our state. Next slide, Todd. So the meat and potatoes of this, and the focus and the concern with our agency and every other agency in this state. Violent crime in the state of Washington was up 8.9%. Murder skyrocketed. They were up 16.6% to an all-time high of 394 murders in 2022 in the state. Crime has increased exponentially in the state overall, 8.5%. And vehicle thefts, I don't even have words for this, but it increased by 34.1%. Over 12,000 more cars were stolen in 2022 than in 2021. I'll wait a second so we can get this. This is actually from the crime report. This is our data, and I'll go over some of this to show you how our numbers are reflective or a parallel and reflective of what we're seeing in the state. And I'll focus on a couple of areas. Our felonious assaults or aggravated assaults were up 80%. From 10 to 18 in 2022. Our motor vehicle thefts were up 73.6% in 2022. And you can see some of the other areas there that were considered, I believe, violent crimes, but there wasn't really any change, like rapes. Same number, 3 as reported in 2021, 3 was also reported in 2022. Same thing with robberies. Our burglaries and our property crimes were somewhat down. I attribute that to our increase in technology, if you can see those numbers. And I know that we have some of our numbers that are up, that are parallel with the state, but a lot of our numbers came down. And again, I attribute that to the increase in officers, and we'll talk a little bit about that, the improvement in our technology, and the addition of an investigator to our detective unit to help follow up on some of these things. If you look at the top, I don't know if anyone's going to have a question, but I'll cover it anyways. Our clearance rate is 17.1%. It seems really low, but nationally, the clearance rate for property crimes, which is mainly what we see in our city, is extremely low. And it's in that ballpark. I believe it's a little lower. I believe it's like 14%. If you want to get, or you want access to that information, I can send you that information as far as how things are cleared and how things are reported as cleared from the FBI. I can email you the link to that with that data. But again, the main thing that we see in our city is property crimes, and the clearance rate, unfortunately, nationwide for property crimes is extremely low. Violent crimes, crimes against persons, rapes, murders, those types of crimes, the clearance rates are around 64%, I believe, so they're a lot higher than property crimes, because those are our focus.
This doesn't include 23. This is just the previous 2 years.
This is just previous 2 years, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, 2022. Next slide, Todd. Our staffing was also took a hit in 2022 statewide. Our commissioned officer staffing went down 4.4%. We lost 495 officers in the state in 2022. That brought our officers per capita number down to 1.38 per thousand. And that's the lowest on record in the state of Washington. I'm sorry, that was 2021. In 2022, we were down another 70 officers, excuse me, to 10,666. And I really want to change that 666 in that data. I don't like that. So, we have taken a hit, and there's a lot of reasons why officers are leaving this profession in the state of Washington. A lot of it has to do with our legislative changes and the consequences of that, the absenteeism, the burnout, especially the burnout. It's an extremely stressful time for officers in our state. So hopefully there will be some changes to our legislation or our laws in the future to help combat some of the unintended consequences, as the gentleman said earlier. I don't know if we're going to see this change anytime soon, because I think a lot of officers are at a critical level right now, especially again when it comes to burnout and fatigue, et cetera. Next slide, Todd. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because, of course, we haven't had a homicide in Liberty Lake in the last couple of years. I will say this. I have a lot of officers say we're overdue. I pray that we don't see a life taken here. But just be aware that our officers have responded to numerous, over the last couple of years, homicides at our city limits, just outside of our city limits. So it's close. It hasn't been over our borders, but it's close. So we're keeping an eye on these trends again, our violent crimes, because they are increasing, as you saw by the data. Next slide, Todd. Next slide, Todd. Sorry. We haven't seen any true incidents of hate crimes. We had an incident just this past week with a young lady. There was a report of a young lady walking down the street, and there was some really horrendous derogatory language said out the window towards her. Unfortunate event, but it doesn't meet the definition of a hate crime because there wasn't an assault or anything like that. But we are investigating that to see if we can determine, identify the individuals in the vehicle and see if we can have a talk with them. Next slide, Todd. Again, we just talked about our staffing. I won't double up on that. Next slide, Todd. Next slide. One of the things that we did see, which was really surprising, because we've been fairly fortunate the last 4, 5, 6 years, is the officer assaults, or the assaults on officers. They increased in 2022. We've had several incidents here last year where we've had to use force, and we were fairly lucky. But I believe a lot of this boils down to training, and we have an emphasis on training and emphasizing officer safety and those types of things. So hopefully we can avoid any officers that are injured or worse through training and our ongoing emphasis on officer safety. Next slide, Todd. All right, we talked about that. Next slide, Todd. I believe that's it. So one of the big things and the emphasis from WASPIC is the increase in our officers in our state. Our legislature didn't help us out this last go around. Hopefully we can revisit it next year and we can get some assistance from the state for cities and counties to hire more officers. This is something that's our focus. Just to let you know, this go around as far as our budget planning, and making sure that we're adequately staffed and our organizational structure is where it needs to be moving forward for the next 4 or 5 years. This is a long-term. Darren and I spent a lot of time looking at not just the now, but we don't think finitely, we think infinitely. We try to look at the next 3 to 4 to 5 years to see where we're going and stay ahead of the game. Because one of the mistakes that I've seen in law enforcement, and I'm pretty sure Councilmember Salberg has seen, is we're always behind the curve. And so we're trying to stay ahead of the game, especially with our organizational structure, our hiring, our technology, our training. And again, one of the big emphasis for WASPC this year is we have to increase our officers in this state. And we have to make some changes to our legislature to assist. I mean, we can hire 500,000 officers next year. If our legislature doesn't help us out, it's not going to do any good. And the criminals know that, the bad guys know that. So I think that's it, Todd. Next slide. Next slide, Todd.
Any questions?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Chief, on the officers you're talking about, you just said 5,000, but do you find that we're just rotating officers from one part of the state to the other, or are you finding that you're getting new recruits coming in that are, out of high school, out of college, whatever? What percentage of the younger generation is joining the force?
Compared to when we started, literally zero. I just talked to one of the administrators over at the Seattle PD. We have a meeting, 3 of us, we have a meeting typically every 2 or 3 months to talk about trends and things that are going on. Their last hiring process, and this is Seattle, they had 2 applicants. 2.
So really,
And so
it's coming down to what you're willing to pay for an officer.
It's how it appeals to each one of those individuals, where we're talking about a new hire, an intermediate, or a lateral. One of the big things is the hiring bonus. And it's been proven that the hiring bonus really isn't, it does nothing, especially for a lateral. I think that one of the things, especially laterals, look at is the culture and climate in the organization, the community, especially if they have a family. Will their family fit in there, the schools, all those things. They're looking for a better life typically if they're moving from one agency to another. We have a wonderful community. Our men and women in our agency are outstanding. We have a great culture and climate. So I think that's why we're fortunate enough to have and draw some of the applicants that we do draw. But we have larger agencies around here that are having issues recruiting. And they're actually calling us to ask, do you have anybody that you passed over that may be good in our agency? And so it's the recruiting, the whole recruiting situation is, I mean, it's the dire straits right now for some agencies. It's difficult. We don't have as many people wanting to do this job. And honestly, I don't blame them. It's changed so much. I mean, when I tested, and I'm pretty sure when Darren tested, it wasn't uncommon and Councilmember Salberg to have 300 or 400 or 500 people or more testing for 1 or 2 positions. And now you're lucky to get, again, 2, 3 applicants, and the quality of those applicants are another issue. And so you start looking into those variables. You may be lucky if you get 5 applicants to have 2 qualified applicants. Fortunately, again, we haven't run into those issues in our community. And I think a lot of that has to do with, first and foremost, everyone sitting at the table here and your support, our community support, and how this council over the years has kept this community not just appealing to law enforcement officers wanting to come and live here, but every other profession, whether and retirees as well. And so as long as we can keep our community, in that status, I think we'll never have any issues recruiting. And and I will say our pay and benefits has to be, it has to be appealing as well. Because there's some agencies right now, and I'll bring up SPD, that just got a contract that I think my mouth is still on the floor at the public safety building right now. It dropped open. my jaw. Our pay, our salary, our benefits have to be, appealing as well.
So we're behind again.
Well, I will say, they just negotiated and the county's getting ready to negotiate and there's a couple agencies that are negotiating now, so.
Can I just?
Yes,
add?
go ahead.
When in reality, it's just, the biggest problem is the legislature. Because now we're just competing for the same pool
Mhm.
of officers and it.
Yeah.
And I brought this up previously, our budget for the department is almost doubled for the last 6 years in a row. And I don't see that stopping. So as we go forward in our discussions, that's got to be a huge part of it, because I feel like all we're doing now is damage control by the legislature.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the reasons why I supply each and every one of you with, and I do my research and I reach out to other chiefs. And I inquire, what is your budget? How are you planning your budget? Where are your, where are you allocating your dollars? What are your priorities? I plan on doing that this year again, just to make sure that, with the agencies and the chiefs that I trust, that I know, as far as from a leadership standpoint, that they are on top of it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the chief? Councilmember Spencer.
Are you finding that that's even across state lines, or is that nationwide, or is that just in Washington that you're seeing that?
I think it's a nationwide trend, depending what I will say, it's a nationwide wide trend. But there are some states that are still seeing, they have a lot of officers. I mean, down south, they have a lot of officers, but their pay and their benefits, it's not as good as we are here. So, I mean, you have agencies that are our size, cities our size in the south that have 40, 45 officers.
Is that due to cost of living?
I think a little bit has to do with cost of living, but there are officers down there, and I know one that's a good buddy of mine that works in Louisiana. I mean, he spends a majority of his time working extra duty because the pay is so low for their salary, he can't afford to live, so he has to work as much extra duty. He's a big DUI guy, so he does a lot of DUI emphasis patrols and things like that. So he pretty much spends, almost all of his time working to survive. So it's just a different atmosphere and a different environment.
Okay, anybody else? All right, thanks for the sobering report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Excuse me. Thanks, Chief. Earlier in the meeting, Councilmember Sahlberg talked about Mission being reopened. So I'm going to invite Lisa to give you an update on the Mission Avenue repair. Lisa?
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, council members, Mayor. So we were pleased that we were able to get the road open today. It was kind of a challenging project with a vacancy on staff and a planned vacation. And I really want to give a call out to Parametrics. They really stepped up to the plate as our third-party inspector for this project. Some challenges, the design ended up being changed in the field to grind the entire roadway with 1.5 inches taken from the shoulder and tapering to less than half an inch at the crown. And then the HMA overlay was installed with a thicker section at the crown to provide a new average cross slope of approximately 3% within the project limits. So that was good. The compaction testing and HMA temperatures as they were pouring were great. A total of 919 tons and change of new HMA was installed on the project, which equates to an average depth of approximately 2.27 inches within the paving limits. And because the design was changed in the field, we opted to do a flood test to make sure that there were no drainage or ponding issues with the new roadway. And I have to give props to Derek Kosenki and his crew. They stepped up to the plate and helped us do the flood test this morning. And again, the roadway was approved, and it's a good product. It will serve the citizens of Liberty Lake well. And Poe and Greenstone really did step up to the plate on this one. And so props to them as well. They still have a little bit of work to do on sidewalk and bus stops. And so that approval will be coming later. And within the next couple of weeks, they'll be working on improvements to Pond 5, which is the pond on the north side by the roundabout. So those approvals will be coming later, but the roadway section was approved. And I stand for any questions.
Any questions on that piece of it? I know Mark's got some other news.
So
Alright.
we, Lisa's update is with respect to the segment of road that is between the roundabouts. We also have this other segment that's east of the Kramer roundabout. And you all should have received a proposal from Greenstone this afternoon. We received it as well. It was late enough in the afternoon that we haven't had a chance to evaluate it. So we're going to do some due diligence. Our team is going to look at that and probably have some follow-up conversations with Greenstone and Parametrics to determine which of those options, if either of them are viable and feasible, and then we will report back to council.
Any questions?
I have one.
Sure,
on
go
that.
ahead.
Based on the report that I saw from planning, we're sending that out to bid the end of July. So are we going to hold on that until we can have a discussion here again?
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that one? Okay, and so our last item, I want to invite David Gaynor up to the microphone just to give you a brief update on the city podcast and some topics that are out there and what's coming next. David?
Could just have you all log in, but you're not equipped for that right now. We started the city podcast in April. The launch was to do one show a week for the first 3 weeks and then go into a regular routine of 2 shows a month. We've managed to continue to do that frequency of new shows. We have just released episode number 9 about a week ago. I want to do some emphasis to get your assistance, those of you who are on the table, those of you sitting in the other seats, those of you listening online. We would like to spread out the word about this. If you haven't listened yet, go online. It's called the Liberty Lake Deep Dive. We have it available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. This is basically Liberty Lake's only opportunity to have its own radio talk show. It's our only chance we get to be on something like radio to talk about things that are happening in this community. This happens in larger cities. They will have regular talk shows. This is it for us right now. So this is our opportunity to listen to current events, current issues, topics that are important to people who live here. And I want to kind of emphasize some of our last few shows, which I thought were very interesting, very timely. We've got into the summer months, so it's kind of a more event promotion, event related topics we've been doing lately. One of my favorite shows has been talking with Don Walker about the story behind those Hometown Heroes banners. That was the longest conversation I've had with anybody for the podcast. We wanted to do maybe shows of around 15 minutes. I talked with Don Walker for 42 minutes. And then I had to edit it down to about a 24-minute conversation, but it was still all good stuff. We also talked with Jen Camp to do an overview of things coming up for summer in the parks. Jen Camp, I think she may have mentioned it was something that she wanted to do on her bucket list to be on the podcast, or maybe she said it wasn't. You'll have to listen to that podcast midway through to find out her answer to that.
Let's take a vote. Who thinks?
We've also talked to Tim Olson to talk about the movies in the parks, doing an overview, a preview of each movie that's been coming up. And Tim and I talked about each film and offered up some trivia about that to let people know about what's happening with each of those films and the dates that they can come see those. We've done a little bit of promotion at the, I've given them some mini posters to talk about the podcast at the summer movie events. And I did notice a little bit uptick in listenership the first Saturday we did that. So on the show with Tim. Most recently, we had a show with Darren Morgan. We have it's like a cast reunion in here right now. We've talked to Mark, Saba, we've talked to Damon, we've talked to Lieutenant. If anybody else in the room would like to be on the podcast with a topic, feel free to talk to me about it. But we did a topic with Darren Morgan a couple weeks ago, that debuted last week on, the title was Things You Should Know About Golf Carts. And this one's taken some interest, a lot of interest. It's debuted last, I think, Monday. Of the 9 shows, it's already the 3rd most listened to show we've done. We've had a little bit of independent promotion on some of the other social media sites. People have been saying, hey, I like this topic, listen to it, share it out. This is a good safety one for all of you to share out to your neighbors, your households. It's not a boring conversation. It's informative, but we add some levity. We add some entertainment value to most of what we do. And we were able to find that a way to do that in talking about golf cart safety with Lieutenant Morgan. Coming up next week, the next show, episode 10, will be, it's a 2-for-1. Mark Saba and Jen Camper on talking with a preview of Barefoot in the Park. So you'll be learning about, through Mark, some of the activities coming up here in a couple of weeks. And then Jen talks a little bit about the history of the event, things that I didn't know, and things probably some of the residents didn't know about how this event started. She also acknowledges some of the organizations involved with this. And then the next one, first part of August, we've already recorded. This was also another long conversation, but it needed to be. Chief Simmons and DG Garcia were both in together to talk about the recently passed public camping ordinance that the city council talked about and passed here a couple months ago. That was one that doesn't lend itself to levity, so that was not really part of that conversation, but it's an important issue to let some people who are leaders in developing this recent ordinance to share what's it about, what it is not about, and touching on some of the connected issues with this particular topic. We've got another, these have not been recorded yet or even scheduled, but we're looking at doing maybe 1 or 2 more event preview related ones by the time we get past September. But again, if anybody here wants to suggest a topic that's going to be relevant and interesting to your neighbors, feel free to contact me. Again, I would encourage you to share this out with your neighbors, your households, let people know about the podcast. Take a listen if you haven't done so already. I know there are some people here who've not listened already. We may very well be able to get a larger audience of people than saw the Flash movie. So that's going to be my goal here. Anybody have, I was one of those people, by the way. Anybody have questions, or suggestions?
Could maybe you two do a back and forth on our strategic plan survey results?
That can probably be arranged.
I think there's some great information for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of good findings there. Mark was actually our first guest. It was Meet the City Administrator. Still barely right now, but still the #1 listened show we've had so far. That was a good conversation. People like listening to Mark.
All right.
Anything
Thanks,
else?
David. Appreciate it. I would definitely hit the Rotary up with regards to their rim ride in September.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Virtually endless number of topics.
Definitely.
I have a list of 50 topics we can recommend to you.
There.
So Mayor, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, up next, we have Parks and Arts Commission, Nancy Hill, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm Nancy Hill, Parks and Arts Commission. I just want to thank council and our police department. After every time I sit in one of these meetings, I remember the hard work you guys do every day. So thank you so much for that. I'm here with on a happier note for our project update. Our Hooptown basketball mural project is underway. The artist agreement was approved. We've done our first payment, and resurfacing is starting this week in preparation for the artist to come in and do the mural work, which we hope will be done by the end of September, of course, weather permitting. We may run into a little bit of additional paint costs because we're talking with Hoop Fest and the Spokane Arts about durability, but it will still come in under budget. I talked with Ryan Stockton today, and Hoop Fest, Hooptown USA is completely committed to supplying the basketball goals for this project. So I'm really excited, and that's the double courts at Pavilion Park. And segueing from that is a skate park, which is next door to that. And we're looking at utilizing unused Parks and Arts Fund towards a skate park feature painting. And this came about by evaluating the artists for the basketball court mural. And you can see on the screen, there's graffiti art, which really caught our eye. And trying to reduce graffiti in a skate park, we're going to add graffiti to a skate park. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We have a draft artist agreement completed. I believe that artist is a Liberty Lake resident, if I recall correctly. And that'll be submitted to council for approval in August. And again, I think we can fit it into this year's budget. So hopefully we can get it done. Again, that'll be weather permitting and getting the agreements together. We're happy to support the Greenstone Foundation in finalizing their 3-year contract with the Symphony, Spokane Symphony, for Labor Day performances in Liberty Lake for the next 3 years. So we're in very much support for your approval of that agreement, along with a 3-year agreement with Satori Dance, which sounds like a fun kind of date night in the park for couples and even families to dance outside at Pavilion Park. And support of a 3-year pickleball league contract for the newly formed, I think it started from a Facebook group, Liberty Lake Pickleball League. So we're excited and hope that you agree and support that. I believe you'll find that on your agenda. We've been working on our strategic plan and budgeting for 2024, and we're looking forward to working with you guys next year on some other fun projects. And yeah, it's a good day to be in Liberty Lake.
Lots
Any
going on.
questions?
I don't see. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. The work is stellar. So I'm very grateful for the work, your work, and all the volunteers in the commission.
Well, we've got a great commission, so we'll see you guys on the basketball court,
Well,
right?
and I know we were hooking up with somebody to do drone footage as that process goes on.
And that's
so.
gonna be so cool because the artist work just knocked it out of the park. And then if we can get the skate park next door to have that, it's gonna be really kind of a shining little light right in that area.
Great.
I think the kids and everybody are gonna be excited about it.
Very
We can
much.
just keep them off the area while the work is done.
That's always the
Right.
challenge.
What? See, you didn't want to hear that. Anyway, thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, next up, Planning Commission Chair Richard Seiler, welcome.
Hi, council. I'm 2 weeks post brand new knee in my left leg. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of, some of the workshops we're working on in our planning meeting are coming to you guys here shortly. I think we've pretty much completed our stuff on them. One of them is just some updates for our public utility distribution facilities to make those limited. You don't have to, they're no longer a conditional use in most of our zones. That's just to help out what we need to keep our infrastructure there. Some other things with the current events around the nation and whatnot is our fencing standards for around some of our public utilities to allow them some not so sightly, but very effective security fencing around. So that's kind of goes against what we like in our, but it's a necessary evil, I think. Then also one of the things we've looked at, I think it's mostly staffed, but it's the reduce on the community events and the temporary use permits, trying to get that unraveled into a better process for the city and the users both on it. We get into now the next one is our River District. River District Greenstone has proposed some signage changes and some landscape changes for their area, for the Greenstone development over there in the River District. Not too controversial. I suspect we'll get through that pretty well. The next one, the last one I wanted to talk about is going to be the hard one, is the open space. Greenstone has put together an open space that will cover the area under the power lines, the farm, and their parks over there in the River District. That open space, we had our first workshop. We had an introduction to it in June, and our July workshop was the most attended of any planning commission meeting I've been to of the public. Very and not in favor of a lot of the stuff that's going on there. So that's going to be a pretty good get through for the planning commission, and I think it'll come to the council with a lot of public interest. I'll say that. It's going to be a difficult one. Some of the things that are in that proposal are things like using shipping containers for storage. I think in that area, which shipping containers by no means meet any of our building code. Anything. I mean, so it's really hard to argue that one, but we gotta go figure out if that's going to be allowed or not. And then the other thing is that farm, I was surprised how many people opposed the farm over there. And I remember years ago when they were coming up with that development in the orchards that they were talking about and stuff, that farm has got its own issues too, partly because of it's some people that back up to it consider it unsightly. They don't like to look at the greenhouse. They don't like to look at the shipping containers. They don't like the noise of the refrigeration units or of the cooling fans or of those shipping containers. And they also have a refrigerated unit over there too, for what comes out of the field. So, and there's sometimes a little bit of smell of farming, I guess. That's probably one thing. So it's noise and whatnot. And it's, I'm surprised how much pushback there is, but that's okay. That's something for us to go look at and try to get parties to come to some type of agreement. So that's what we're working on. Big thing though is that Greenstone proposal for the open space. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thanks for doing what you do.
Just really grateful for the work of the commission as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
We enjoy it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Happy healing. All right, last but not least, we have Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District. I see Nadia online.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Thanks for letting me have a chance to address you as always. Hope everyone's having a great summer. I just have 4 quick things. One, I want to thank the gentleman from the Planning Commission for mentioning that they're looking at security fencing for utilities and other facilities that would require additional safety and security. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. I want to mention we're still having trouble getting parts. We're trying to keep up with all the development going on in this booming city, which really is great. But we're doing trading with other districts and very creative things to try to stay ahead of this and keep up with the demand, even though we're having trouble with supply still. Backflow prevention checks. The deadline has come and gone. Hopefully everyone got theirs tested and is okay. I know there is still a bit of angst out in the community. I think we're getting more accustomed to this and we'll keep working on it. But I do know there were a few people who were a little bit irritated having to do this, but it's for the safety of the water supply. So it's something we gotta keep doing. And then the last thing I want to mention is that our office is under construction. We're doing some remodeling inside. So if you have any business at the Sewer and Water District, there's a side entrance that is open and available to the public. But that'll continue on through the end of the summer, a bunch of remodeling and expansion work. So we are on the list as well of people in the city that are developing and expanding. So that's all I have unless there's any questions.
I don't see any, but I will share real quick, our favorite Facebook page, our Liberty Lake community page. Somebody on there had been vacationing out on the East Coast, and her comment was she couldn't wait to get back to Liberty Lake to drink some fresh water.
Well, that's always nice to hear. And we do have a blessed situation here with all this fresh water that comes into our taps untreated and tasting so good. So glad to hear that.
Right. Thanks for coming in.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Looks good. Thank you. All right, we are on to our workshop discussion about the draft ILA for the Spokane Regional Authority for Homelessness. Obviously, we had the presentation before. You guys had some questions. So now's, I guess, your time to have further discussion on this, whether or not this is something the council wants to move ahead with. Obviously, there's no approval needed at this point, but I'd like to hear your comments and suggestions and your feelings on joining this regional project. Councilmember Dunn.
I think I heard Mr. Romero introduce tonight that what had been previously an ILA 60-day window will be revised into a resolution of commitment to support. So I guess to consider the instruments that have been drawn in front of us, may be subject to revision based on just now, I'd say the commitment to support.
Councilmember Solberg.
Well, I've been familiar with the conditions that lead to homelessness or unhoused for a long time and up close and personal. This particular proposal, I think, has a lot of merit and it has even the structure of the board where we have elected officials and some of our leaders, but it has some of the practitioners being a part of this as well. The missing piece has always been the mental health piece. Addiction services have always been out there. We've had detox and some other things, but I really like the way that they're proposing to work this. It does sound like in terms of funding, it's going to give us more accountable funding. The problem, and all of us in here have dealt with that before, but it's not the strings that are attached to the government money. It's the lack of follow through to show that there's any, that money is getting to where it's supposed to be, and then that it's having an impact on it. And that's built into this one. And I think Rick has been involved in it for a long time, but Gavin Cooley is the one who I think is the lead on kind of changing that direction, as well as Chris from Hello for Good from Washington Trust Bank.
Yeah, Chris Patterson.
Yeah, Chris Patterson. So I think it's got a lot of merit. It looks much more hopeful. One of the concerns that I told you guys that I was going to go to these is I don't think you're going to see an awful lot of involvement from the agencies that have had money thrown at them. And I'm not going to use any of the names because you know who they are. And the ones that have had money that have been absconded with no accountability. And I don't think they're going to be a part of this solution. They're going to be, they have a mission, and some of their missions are in alignment, but the one that we got a chance to see that is really in alignment with them is going to be building out in the valley, and that is Family Promise. And they're very integral to this whole process. So I think it's a good start.
Great. All right. Councilmember Cargill, then Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I just want to echo what Tom said. And, I think that not only Rick, but Gavin and Teresa are great people to be leading this effort. And if they're behind it, I would be behind it as well. So Dan's comments, I don't know, and I know Phil wants to jump in here as well, but I guess my question is, do we need a motion then tonight to support advancing this, and then it'll be brought back in the form of a resolution?
I don't think it would hurt.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Rick would like that. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem.
My only question is just to verify the funding source to start. And if I heard correctly, it's basically peeling back a portion of the state sales tax legally without changing the sales tax rate for the benefit of this program. Is that it?
Yeah.
That's what I heard too.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I clarify one?
Sure.
That is correct. To address Councilmember Cargill's question during the first agenda item, because all of the money that would be contributed on behalf of the city would be passed through in essence. There is no staffing associated with that. There isn't currently, and there wouldn't be in the future. So this would not be a staffing commitment. It would be only a funding commitment that is and has always been passed through. So, okay.
And I mean, we're not approving the agreement tonight anyway,
Correct.
so that,
Correct.
and it's subject to change, and Rick said they're going to be meeting on Thursday again, so.
Right.
Until it comes back, we won't know exactly what it is, but.
That's right.
Go ahead, Councilmember Dunn.
Madam Mayor, I would move that the staff prepare a resolution for our next meeting, introducing a commitment of Liberty Lakes support and interest in, I would say, composing ILAs to participate.
Yeah.
Trying to think of the right wording now.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Kelsey, did you get enough of that? Okay. Yeah, so, and any further discussion? Go ahead. Councilmember Spencer.
I'll just say, and thank you, Mark, for answering that question. Because that was the one question I had, was whether there was any other staff concern or any other resources that we're allocating towards this. So that's great. And to echo what Councilmember Sahlberg spoke of with Family Promise, you will notice in the section on housing, their goal to reduce by 40% in unsheltered homeless begin shift from congregate housing model to a distributed housing model, which is exactly what Family Promise is doing. So I'm glad to see that they're involved and probably leading the charge with regard to that.
All right, there's no other discussion. Go ahead and call for a vote to bring back a resolution of support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. All right. Go ahead.
This time I'll make a motion to approve, excuse me, approve consent agenda items 10A and B.
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Solberg. Any questions? Not seeing any. All in favor of approving the consent agenda items A and B, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, not hearing any. Motion passes 5-0.
General business item 11C, I'll call it. Is that okay, Kelsey?
Yeah.
Okay, make a motion to authorize the mayor to execute the employment agreement addendum between the city and the chief of police.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dunn. All right, questions. So the main change on this, though, the agenda bill does talk about the salary change, which is included in the numbers that you guys saw earlier on. We did extend the notice period from 30 to 60 days, given the fact that this is a difficult position to recruit for and interview for. Any other questions? Go ahead. Mayor
So
Pro Tem.
I guess as I read this, I mean, I always rely on the summary statement quite a bit to help me understand what the intent of the action item is. And I'm reading here that the updated salary schedule reflects a 5% increase above top step of proposed deputy chief's salary schedule. But then when I go to later on, we're going to talk about a budget change. And when I go to that, I guess I'm trying to understand what we have budgeted for 2023 versus you have a line here, Kyle, of ordinance 291A with the updates. That's a 13.7% difference. So can you help me understand why the summary statement says 5%?
So we populated the, what you're gonna see later on as the deputy chief, based on what we saw come out of the CBA for a sergeant. So it's bottom up is how we populated deputy chief / lieutenant, and then from there, police chief. And so what we did is encapsulate all of that. So that is an all-encompassing total that you see in the budget amendment for our projected increases. If that answers your question, sorry.
For both positions.
Correct.
As well as the
As-
other, the
that's
other
correct.
delta that from the collective bargaining agreement.
Yes, that is an all-inclusive number, including.
And since we're talking about both positions, I'll just ask my question when that
Yeah.
one comes
Sure.
up. It's a 31% increase on the deputy chief line item.
Correct.
But yet the summary statement says 5. So I guess I'm trying to, I guess what I'm looking for is what is our budgeted what is our budgeted low to high, like you have on
Right.
your chart?
Yep.
And help me understand the percentage difference after this ordinance 291, because it's not 5%.
Yeah, so and apologies for the confusion. It's 5% of the top step sergeant. And so my apologies for not including that range in this document. So and we can,
So is this more than just salary? This is benefits and everything else that goes along with
this is all inclusive. Yes, absolutely. So,
Okay. All right, well, that helps a little bit.
sorry.
I still want to question the 31% on the deputy chief.
Absolutely. And so from his current to that, yes, that is, and that is included in the number that you see in the budget amendment, that section 1.
Mhm.
All of these increases are included in that. But in populating that summary statement, it was purely the rationale for developing that salary range was we started with the sergeant, top step sergeant. What was that number? 5% above that was our rationale for starting step 1 for the deputy chief / lieutenant. And that populates out to a top step of that. Then 5% above that populates step 1 of the chief of police. And that was a rationale for developing those salary schedules.
So, and the reason why I'm asking the question is I read the contracts 10 years from now, when maybe none of us are here, it would be nice if it was easily understood, I guess
Sure.
is what I'm getting at here. So that's why I'm
Yeah.
even asking the question.
Absolutely. And so so going forward, part of the discussion was, what do we include in the agreement? And so there isn't any, and I found this out later, there is no justification for including the salary update in the agreement. And so that's part of the disconnect of why you don't see a new agreement for chief of police, but you do for deputy chief. Because that's purely reflected in the salary schedule. So that was purely just informative, trying to include that in a new chief of police agreement. When me and Sean got together Friday afternoon, he's questioning why I'm bringing a new agreement forward. And all of a sudden we're backtracking and saying we need an addendum, not a new agreement. And so that's part of the confusion, I think, that was born by, we initially had a full scale new agreement that was largely carbon copy from the previous, but then it was understood that that was unnecessary. We just needed an addendum, and leaving, I think, that summary statement the way it is, I wouldn't have done that going forward.
So that leads me to my next question then, is on the in the contract, it calls out a number of 115,000. So does the amendment need to say anything? I mean, because all I'm saying, when I was reading that, I'm like, how can you make heads or tails of this 5 years from now if we're gonna make a contract change or an amendment, whatever you want to call it, if we don't call it out as what it is today or for the upcoming year or whatever. So I don't know how to.
Mayor, let me
Yeah.
address. So originally what happened is there were two agreements, one for the chief and one for the deputy position. And so when I was talking with Kyle, I said, well, wait a minute, there's already a contract in place with the chief. We don't need to have a brand new contract when we already have one in place. So the salary figure that we're talking about here for the increase was part of the new agreement. But I said, does that already incorporate what the steps are? Does that already incorporate what the salary schedules are? And the answer to that was yes. So there wasn't a need to go back and redo the contract with regard to the salary aspect, because it was already part of the steps. It was already part of the salary schedules with regard to that position.
Okay.
So that's why you just see the addendum, and we just changed the notice provision and not the salary aspect. With regard to the deputy position, that's new with regard to the contract, and that's why you have that contract and not addendum. And then, as Kyle said, creating that new step in salary ranges within that position, and then the 5% between the sergeant, deputy, and then 5% on the range. Okay, so that's how it came about.
So, okay, so we don't need it in the amendment for the chief, not for the deputy.
Correct. We don't need anything further for the
Any
chief.
future reference on where we're at with that position will refer to the salary schedule.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Does that need to be put in the amendment on the contract?
No, because the contract already talks about compensation is relative to the salary schedules and the steps within the chief of police position.
Makes better sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
All right, I think Councilmember Cargill, I think I
No,
saw
I'm
your
good.
hand up.
I'm
You're
good.
good. Okay. All right, so we're still on the first one, the chief of police. Any other comments?
I have another one, but I'll let everybody else go first.
I guess you go. I don't see any other hands on
I'd like to reference section 5 on the chief's contract, salary contract. If I'm using the proper terminology, says that the mayor will conduct a performance evaluation, so on and so on and so on. Just one, I wanted to ensure that that actually happened, and two, is that something that can be shared with the council?
Yes, we do that for all of the employees, chief included. And I don't know, HR wise, is that something, I don't know.
The reason I'm asking
Yeah.
the question is, this body is supposedly going to approve an increase in salary, wages, whatever you want to call it. And I just would, just so I can say, yep, I looked at what I verified what the mayor did as part of the contract.
Yep. So I don't know what we can
Any,
share.
any concern about sharing those?
I don't believe so.
Well, and even in here, it says, to address any mayor or city council concerns, so on and so on.
Yeah. Okay, well, as long as Sean's up with it, I just don't want to step on any toes, HR.
No,
wise.
yeah. You understand my reason?
Oh, yeah.
So would this be a separate motion then that we would make to add that, since this since we're only adding an addendum to this contract?
To add what?
To add what Phil is saying, assuming you're asking for the language to be put in.
No,
that be
it's
shared with
already-
us?
No, it's already in the
Yeah, okay,
contract itself.
okay.
I'm just.
The original contract.
Right,
Just asking,
okay.
was it done?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Can you share it?
Right,
So we
okay,
can, I can say, yep, I
thank you.
agree, and we
Yep.
can pay the man.
We can get that.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on the item for the chief's contract?
No, that's all I had on that one.
All right. So in hearing no further questions or comments, all those in favor of approving 11C, the updated contract for the chief of police, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0.
General business item 11D, I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to execute the employment agreement between the city and the deputy chief of police.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Councilmember Dunn. Questions? I know, Chief Simmons is ready to answer any questions with regards to the reasons why this change. If you guys would like him to come to the podium to answer anything. No?
I have other questions.
Okay. Go for it.
Thank you. Is there a start date for the agreement?
It's retroactive to July 1st.
It doesn't say that.
We get there. There you go.
I was looking for it similar to the chief's agreement. It was right at the top, so. At least I didn't find it. And again, I'm just.
Right,
Looking
it's
for future.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Bottom of page 4 references, the parties execute this agreement on the first day of July 2023.
Okay. So
There
you're
you
gonna, we're just gonna rely on the signature block then?
To the greatest extent that we can mirror these, I think that we should do that.
No, yeah, that execute that day. That'd be big.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't need it at the top of the document,
No.
It's at the bottom.
just checking.
No.
Let's see here. And then, of course, page 49, what do they have on page 49? Oh, no, that was it. Page 51, sorry. And again, it was just gonna be the performance evaluation question. Yeah,
Done.
done?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions on this item? All right, not seeing any. All in favor of approving 11D, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not hearing any. Motion passes 5-0. All right, I'll get back up. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm scrolling.
Excuse me, general business item 11E, make a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Joe Mann to the Civil Service Commission.
Second.
All right, we have a motion second. Joe's here. If you'd like to come up to the podium, maybe introduce yourself for a moment. Most of you should probably recognize Joe. He's on our planning commission as well. But we interviewed 5 applicants, chose 3, and he was one of our top contenders. So Joe, if you want to introduce yourself and just maybe tell the council why you were interested in being on the commission.
Oh, thank you. First of all, I appreciate it. It's an honor for be considered for this appointment, and I appreciate that a great deal. I really have a lot of respect and admiration for what our law enforcement does, mostly because of my background. My grandfather was chief of the county police department where I grew up. My father was a deputy sheriff for a time. I've even had some law enforcement experience, but it was as a baseball umpire at high school and college levels. And as a football referee for 15 years. So I kind of understand a little bit of it, but I think one of the things I really want to do is give back to this community. I've made my living as a realtor here for 23 years, and realtors make their living off the community. And I've always felt an obligation to give back. And that's why I've served on the Board of Equalization for the county for 15 years. I served on the Spokane Valley Planning Commission and now Planning Commission here. And I'm excited about this because I think one of the things this commission can do is take a lot of the administrative burden off of the chief and the deputy chief and allow them to be more effective and more efficient at what they do. And that's law enforcement. And that's what this commission is all about. I'm really looking forward to that prospect. The other part, I think, is this commission needs to be an advocate for our law enforcement, our Liberty Lake Police Department, as well as serving the citizens. But one of the things we can do, and we all know it, and Chief Simmons and I have had this conversation, we can always get better. And I think by having this commission in place and allowing us to do the job as it's outlined in the RCWs, it will take a lot of the burden off them so they can focus more on the things that will make us safe as the public. Any questions?
I think just one of the things, Joe, that I know I've known you for a few years now, but I didn't know a lot about your background, but I was really impressed with the leadership experience that you got while you were serving in the military.
Yeah, I was fortunate the last 4 years I was in the Air Force. I was on the faculty at Air University teaching leadership. And it was a great experience for me. I probably learned far more than I taught. I was both a lecturer and also a counselor to, and what we were doing was training captains and lieutenants for leadership for the next 3 levels of promotion within the Air Force. And it was a fantastic experience and learned a lot from it. And I hope to be able to use a lot of that here with the police department as well. I do plan on going on ride-alongs with the police. I think that's an important aspect of this. We really need to understand what these folks are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's really important. Thank you.
All right, questions, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, that's impressive background you gave us there, Mister. Are you planning to stay on the planning commission?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm planning to stay on the planning commission as well. And I told you guys this before, the planning commission is the tip of the spear when it comes to the way this city is going to grow. And I think that's a really important role and it's fascinating. I have to tell you, planning commission is a fascinating experience. I'm thinking that Public Service Commission is fascinating from what I've been reading in the RCW and my conversations with the chief and the deputy chief. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Joe? All right, not hearing any, all in favor? Oh, sorry, what? Go ahead.
I don't have a question
Yeah.
for Joe.
Sure.
I just, for the record, on the application, it's what position is he applying for? It says salary.
We were having trouble with the form.
Okay.
Oh.
So just for the
Yeah.
minutes, we can
Yeah.
fix that.
Yeah.
And then, since since this has nothing to do with the candidate.
Yeah,
again, but
sure.
Since I've kind of put my name down on the appointment process, I love that you've come and expressed your background and your desires. But as I look at the application, one of the references is on the council. So, nothing against that either. I just want to ask the group, as I prepare for our upcoming meeting about appointments, how does everybody feel about a reference being on the application and voting for the candidate?
I have no
Comments?
concerns.
And I'm not looking for an answer maybe this second, but just something to think about. So as we move forward with this process, we can fine tune this.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Having your name as reference inherent in and of itself is not an issue. The issue is whether the council member can be fair and objective in making a decision. And to the extent that that council member believes they can't be impartial or fair, then they need to recuse themselves. But just the mere fact that they've been referenced doesn't necessarily disqualify them from being able to vote on the position.
I totally agree. I just
Yeah.
wanted to bring it up because I saw it on the application.
Yeah.
So, thank you. That's
Any
all I
other
have.
comments?
Okay.
All right, not hearing any other comments, all in favor of confirming the mayor's appointment of Joe Mann to the Civil Service Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-1. All right, thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you,
You're
council.
appointed.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next up, Brittany Webster. What?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was just gonna have her come up. Go ahead.
Make a motion?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll make a motion for general business 11 F to confirm the mayor's appointment of Brittany Webster to the Civil Service Commission.
Do you have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Councilmember Solberg. All right, your turn, Brittany. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be on the commission.
Cool. Well, yeah, thanks so much for allowing me to serve on the commission. I've lived here 8-ish years. I'm married to a sexy firefighter. So that's kind of how this all got started. So really weird, unconventional story of why I'm here right now. I come from a long line of firefighters, ended up marrying one, got imported to Washington. He's now a fire marshal for the city of Spokane. Ends up, I didn't know anything about civil service 2 years ago. Until there was weird stuff going on in his fire department. And I'm like, how can this happen? I don't know anything about this, but let me research. So stay-at-home mom with ADHD sitting there, like looking up RCWs, that kind of thing. Someone in the fire family said, hey, Spokane Valley's fire department is looking for a civil service commissioner. Why don't you apply? So then I'm Googling what is civil service and all that kind of stuff. So ends up, I apply, I get it. I'm a year and a half in currently to my 6-year term with the fire department. So then it comes to the current, I'm on Facebook and hey, Liberty Lake City is looking for a civil service commission. And I'm like, well, it's kind of a weird niche, right? I mean, the things that I've learned in the year and a half has been priceless. And who wants to do this weird stuff? So I'm like, I will, right? Let's volunteer. So somehow I made it through the interview and here I am to serve my community. So a little unconventional, like I said, but now it comes down to this. So super excited, super jazzed. Any questions?
Well, and I know, one thing we talked about in your interview was all of the hiring and all the activity you've actually seen in the year and a half, which is an amazing amount.
Yeah, it was a very intense year for the fire department. I don't want to speak out of turn without Chief here, but there's a backlog of hiring. So once I got hired, it was like go time. I had no idea what was going on, asking questions like crazy, having to vote on things as I'm Googling, right? And so dealing with our own civil service lawyer in with the in-house lawyer, all this weird things going on that I learned hands-on right on the cuff. And so that for me was way better than 6 years of no appeals, no court hearings, none of that. And then doing tons of hiring, actually hiring that chief was the first person that we approved to hire. And so the process of that unfolding has been amazing. Scary as all get up, but learning it that way was priceless. So I was hoping that at some point I could bring that to this also. Not gonna lie, the stuff between city municipalities and county and sheriff or police is totally different. I've already had to consult a lawyer asking questions because police and fire are so different. And so that's been really fun, actually. That's just how much of a nerd I am, that's fun. And so I'm hoping with this opportunity to be able to serve to max capacity. So like hit the ground running with whatever comes our way. So just met these guys right before the meeting and I'm super excited.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, you reference, have insight to the current RCWs and the WAC. Curious, what's the one thing on RCW that has shocked you the most?
Probably the one where when you're applying for the position, having to announce your political party. Because this position, it shouldn't matter in your political party because there's no opinion. You're only going off of rules. And so I thought that was really interesting that you would, on a 3-person, you'd only want to not have 3 of the same when it doesn't matter. So I thought that was really interesting.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, not hearing any. All in favor of confirming the mayor's appointment of Brittany Webster to the Civil Service Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-1. All right, thanks, welcome. I'll wait for you this time.
Okay, general business item 11G, make motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Maria Hatcher to the Civil Service Commission.
Welcome, Maria. All right,
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm incredibly excited. I moved to Liberty Lake with my two sons in 2005. We bought a hoarder's house and redid the whole thing, and we have loved living here ever since. The good news about that is that Liberty Lake was instrumental in providing a great quality of life for my sons, but our circumstances offered them a great opportunity to learn how to be real men. One of the things that I really, when I was thinking about applying for this, and I was getting ready to fill out the application, I thought a lot about my career. I've been a nurse for over 25 years. It'd be easier to tell you what kind of nurse I haven't been than what I have been. It would be easier to tell you the people that I haven't known than the people I have and that I've helped. When it comes to public safety and quality of life, supporting our police officers to me is paramount. We're never going to be able to truly preserve quality of life without that, in my opinion. I have served on search and rescue. I'm also part of the Intermountain Search Dog team. So we've been up here in the hills. I love being a part of this community. I love being able to be in an active role, to be a part of the solution. And so I really appreciate this opportunity. I am the new guy. I don't have any experience in this regard, but I do have a lot of experience in leadership. I've been in hiring situations. I've been in a lot of interview situations. I've been a mentor, a lot of experience that I hope I can bring to the table and really serve our community.
great, thanks. All right, any questions? Councilmember Solberg.
Maria, I appreciate that you want to support law enforcement, but my question for you with regard to this position is, are you also just as willing to hold law enforcement accountable to their oath when you come for disciplinary or potential issues of that the Civil Service Commission is going to have to do? And if so, how would you do that? Because if you come in with a bias that you're going to be pro-police, and that, I mean, that's as much as declaring that you're a Republican or a Democrat. So.
And I guess maybe that sounded wrong by making it sound like I was pro-police. What I am is pro-community. I have been in situations where I've had to do reprimanding and put together action plans for employees before, whether it be administrators or it's been other nurses or students that I've been mentoring. I have always been deemed fair and balanced when I look at those things. I believe in education. I believe in putting together those action plans with very definitive guidelines. And I think it's really important to have an oversight agency to make sure that those are, that they're measured and we have the outcomes that can really serve where we're trying to head with all of this. And really, ultimately, it is about the community.
Thank you.
That was my question.
Oh, okay. All right, any other questions? All right, not hearing any. All in favor of confirming the mayor's appointment of Maria Hatcher to the Civil Service Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 4-1. Welcome. And soon you guys will be getting together for the first time and looking forward to what you guys, the path you guys forge. So we'll make sure you guys all get together with your sponsor there at PD. Thanks, guys.
Mayor, I'm sorry, who seconded the motion on that one?
I missed that one.
I'm not sure that I heard.
Make it me.
Okay. Thank you.
It's always the one I don't mark down that you have to ask me about. All right, Mayor Church Pro Tem, back to you.
We're out of general business items, Mayor.
Okay. All right, so we are up to council comments. Do we have any council comments to add for today? Again, notwithstanding our upcoming workshop discussion here in a little bit.
I just had one
Yeah,
comment.
sure.
I want to thank Mark for bringing up the letter from Greenstone. That was one of the things I was going to bring up. So thank you.
Okay. All right, moving on. We have no public hearings or appeals. We have no resolutions. We are up to ordinance, second read ordinance 291A. So just before we jump into this, just to make sure we have this process flow down. So do we want to go ahead and have somebody motion and second the entire thing, then have somebody come in and amend it to pull out the 3 items separately? Or do you want to, should we split it?
So lock up 3, and then we would do the original motion as it's same one amendment from there, do the amendments, and then go back and vote on potential.
Okay. All right, Kelsey.
Ordinance number 291A, an ordinance amending ordinance number 291 passed by the city council on December 6, 2022, entitled an ordinance of the city of Liberty Lake, Washington, adopting a budget for the period January 1, 2023 through December 31, 2023, appropriating funds and establishing salary schedules for established positions.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
can I make a motion to strike section 2?
Oh,
okay.
We'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the whole thing as is, then we'll go back through and strike as necessary.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Say
No,
that
yeah.
again?
Yeah, I'm not understanding.
You have the big dinosaur. and you have the
Yeah,
little
so
ones.
the intent is to have the original motion as is presented here and as is read. Right, you have a motion and a second, and then discussion, and then to extend during discussion, you want to make changes, you make individual motions to amend the original motion. 1, 2, 3.
So we just need a second then, is what you're saying?
No,
Wait, we need a first.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion.
Approve the original motion.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So at this time, I'll make a motion to approve second read ordinance number 291A.
Okay,
Second.
Okay, we have first and a second by Councilmember Dunn. All right, open for discussion.
Okay, so now I'll make a motion to strike section 2.
All right. Okay, we have a motion to strike section 2 on keeping track of who's what here. Second by Councilmember Dunn. All right. All right, any discussion? Not hearing any. Okay, all in favor of striking section 2 from ordinance 291A, please raise your hand. All right, any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. We are striking section 2.
So now we can take a motion to separate them.
Is that any further amendments? Or
Well, that's what he's got another one.
so if you want to make that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to separate sections 1, 3, and 4.
Do we have a second? Not hearing any seconds, motion dies on the table. All right, do we have any other proposed amendments? All right, not hearing any. So we've got Kyle for any questions. Wow, quiet crowd tonight.
We anticipated this and we pieced out. So we have the signature copy without mission.
Wow, impressive.
Honestly, they foreshadowed it last week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we knew that was coming. All right, so we have the 291A with the first and the second with section 2 stricken, excuse me. So now before we go to a vote, we'll ask for citizen comments since this is a second read ordinance. If there's anybody here in chambers or online who'd like to comment on ordinance 291A before the council has a vote, please either just let me know here in chambers, or if there's anyone online, send a note to Todd Henderson in the chat feature. I am assuming nobody here. Todd, anybody online? All right, not hearing any. We'll go ahead and take a vote on the amended ordinance 291A. So all in favor of approving ordinance 291A as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, we are up to number 16. We have no emergency ordinances. Now we are up to introduction of upcoming agenda items. So you've got your list at your desk here. We will be adding well, this is again for workshops. So we will be adding the workshop on mission. Mark, for the August 1st meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have that added. So, and Kelsey's like, she was reading our minds, so she already has the workshop on here for the public safety measure for the November ballot. Continued discussion of the TBD for local sales tax option. Do we want to have that at 6 p.m.? Or do we want to add that to the regular workshop during the 7 o'clock portion of the meeting?
I'd say, there was a mention of National Night Out that night.
Yeah.
I know that, there's a group organizing around Half Moon Park, so, at 6, so, if, unless we have to have that at 6, it'd be nice to be able to attend a
Okay.
portion of that anyway.
All right, does anybody oppose?
So no workshop.
So no
So no
workshop at 6.
Can I make a request for,
Yes.
if we're gonna keep the public safety measure issue on, that even though it is National Night Out, that we ask the sheriff to come to the meeting and brief us?
Sure.
John might have a few
Yeah,
commitments that
I
night.
know.
Yeah. we can
Or
try.
maybe the undersheriff or somebody. And the only reason I say that is because this issue came up at the county commissioners board meeting
Mhm.
this week, and he was there to answer questions and offer his insights. So
Okay,
would like to hear at least from him or somebody in the office.
okay, we can reach out and see who's available.
Looks like Chief has a comment that he may want to contribute.
Typically, in the sheriff's office, on National Night Out, all the administrators spread out.
Yeah. So if not, is it too late to push it to the next meeting in August?
I don't know when they're looking for a response on this. We'll find that out. And if there is room to slide it to the next meeting, but I don't know when the deadlines are.
The one thing I also want to clarify, what does moving the TBD conversation away from August 1st do to that timeline? Okay.
Well, I
Even
wasn't
if-
saying to
yeah.
move it away, just put it at the 7 o'clock.
Oh, just shift it to 7.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, great. So looks like we have 3 things on the agenda for August 1st. Is there any other future workshops? I know we're gonna bring back the baseball discussion. I don't see that on here. We'll make sure we get that on here.
Mayor,
Yes.
regarding the public safety measure, would there be a way that some questions could be submitted to the sheriff? And are there some specific questions you had in mind, Councilmember
Yeah.
Cargill? That maybe we could submit some questions and have a statement prepared that they could give to us that night?
Yeah,
Perhaps.
I like that idea. So if you guys do have questions on that, if you can send them to Mark and myself and Chief. And we'll kind of consolidate that and we'll get some answers. Yes, go ahead.
I can reach out to Undersheriff Kittlestead or Undersheriff or Chief Ellis and the sheriff to see if somebody's available. Undersheriff Thompson, I'm pretty sure we can maybe possibly swing someone if you want to try, but I can do that first thing in the morning.
Well, and let them know too, we usually get to our workshops, depending on what else is on the agenda, another half hour, 45 minutes in.
Okay.
So that might help. Okay, we'll work through that. All right, anything else on the future workshop schedule? Councilmember Solberg.
Are we gonna hear from staff the comparisons of our presentations the last 2 weeks with regard to insurance?
Who else do we have coming, Kyle? Do we have it? That was it? And I know we do have that on here. When are you planning on getting that back on our agenda? It hasn't for August, TBD, staff recommendation for insurance provider. Are you thinking the second meeting?
I think we should shoot for the second week in August. We're still waiting for the information back from our current insurance carrier for
Okay.
what they're projecting for 2024. So.
Okay,
Do you already have it from the gentleman tonight?
To the greatest extent, it's a little bit different how they price out their 2024. So on the information you have tonight, the property is subject to change, but the liability is not. The liability is 80% of your premium.
It's
And
on the
so-
second to last page, right?
yeah.
Oh, I
So-
thought that was
so-
an example.
No,
No,
that's
that's it.
ours.
That's it.
So.
That's,
I thought that was somebody in some other city.
No, so they got our LNI worker hours a couple months ago and put that together, and
Alright.
that's pretty well set in stone.
Yeah.
Property will flex a little bit, probably it'll expand a little bit
Yeah.
on what you see there, I would say.
Kyle?
Yeah, go ahead.
So WCIA was the other quote that we had gotten.
So we got 3.
Oh,
And
did.
we brought
Okay.
2 back because the third was RMSA, and that's provided by AWC. and they were not competitive for our consideration.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so we're through it, coming agenda items. Okay, one more chance for citizen comment. So anybody here in chambers, if you'd like to make a comment, please fill out the yellow form, get it to Kelsey. Oh, go ahead. We need you to fill out a form, sir. I'm kidding. We got you. Come on up. Just remember 3 minutes, and while we have the citizen comment here in chambers, if there's anybody online who'd like to speak next, please send a note to Todd in chat.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I apologize for being late. Therefore, I didn't get an opportunity to fill out the yellow sheet, but I will certainly get that upon leaving. What I wanted to speak to tonight is that I don't know if Councilman Solberg, no one said anything.
I saw you come in, so.
Okay, great. What I wanted to point out is that for the last 3 Fridays at Town Square has been music. And you're aware of this also, somebody talked to you about this. There's been music and a food truck there, and it's been very successful. And as we're sitting there, a citizen happened to mention, say, you know, this would be great to have something like this in Orchard Park. It was like a light bulb going on and go, great idea.
Yeah.
So maybe we can't proselyte and move them over there, but I think it'd be great if the city could maybe reach out, get somebody else who wants to supply music, food trucks at Orchard Park. There's always seems sometimes there feels there's a division between the freeway and back and forth on it. Great turnout, very much appreciated. I think the people in Orchard Park would benefit from the same thing.
Yeah,
So
I was gonna reach out to them this week.
Yeah, reach out to see if we can duplicate something like that. Thank you.
Oh, I thought
Oh
you
my
were
God.
maybe gonna share with the.
15 seconds.
Oh, hold on. I thought you were gonna share, do you have any numbers on the library soiree?
Yes, let me give rough numbers that
Okay.
Betty is the best to be able to come and get a report on that. It was a very successful compared to last year, even with the added costs and stuff. There was over $9,000 that was collected. And by the time we take the expenses off, there'll be a little over $7,000 that
Fabulous.
will clear. Now, the true benefit of that is that I think the one individual who was in charge of this, Marilyn Steen, said something I thought was absolutely outstanding. She said, one person can come up with this idea. But then she looked and she said, the group is what makes it successful. And that's what's phenomenal. I thought that was outstanding on it. So it was really good. The benefit is that all that money, every nickel will go to the library to be able to, as you well know, and I'll repeat it again for the benefit of those who are not here, that those funds go for programs and stuff that the library doesn't, we don't fund as a city. And it's really good. We're excited, looking forward to the new building. We already started talking about what sort of ideas that we can capitalize on because we have a large amount of cash we've raised that we've been looking for a project, and project's going to be in that new building.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Todd, do we have anybody in chat? No, I think we're down to, I think, two citizens watching. So, all right, next thing on our agenda is executive session. We will be adjourning for no more than 10 minutes, probably 5, but let's shoot for 10 per RCW. Make sure I got this right. 42.30.1101G for personnel matters. So we will not be taking any action in the meeting. We will come out and adjourn. So we will be back 9:23. We'll be back. Go to the next room. All right, everybody, we are back. Again, no decisions made and we are adjourned. See you at the next meeting.